Profesi saya di sini sebagai guru, saya mengajar dari kelas 1 sampai kelas 6 sendirian. Dan dalam proses belajar mengajar saya dibantu oleh suami saya.
Saya menekadkan diri, saya ingin menjadi guru agar generasi muda yang akan datang, manusia-manusia Indonesia di masa mendatang bisa menjadi manusia yang lebih baik daripada masa saya sekarang.
Saya ingin menjadi guru karena saya terinspirasi juga dari guru-guru saya terdahulu, di mana saya tidak menyukai suatu pelajaran, tetapi dengan inspirasi beliau, saya menjadi orang yang pada saat itu senang untuk belajar, dan saya punya mindset bahwa saya akan menjadi sukses seperti guru-guru saya.
Alasan saya ingin menjadi seorang guru adalah saya ingin membagikan ilmu dan pengalaman yang telah saya peroleh selama di bangku sekolah itu untuk kepada semua orang yang ada di sekitar saya.
Suka duka saya sebagai guru mengajar di sini, saya mengajar sudah selama 6 tahun mengajar. Suka dukanya sukanya saya melihat siswa itu semangat belajar walaupun dengan kondisi kami yang serba terbatas.
Kontribusi yang saya dapatkan dari pajak salah satunya yaitu fasilitas jalan yang betul-betul saya rasakan. Dulu tahun 1993 sampai tahun 2000-an itu kami tidak bisa menggunakan sepatu dari rumah ke sekolah ini. Kenapa? Karena jalannya jelek dan putus. Kami harus menggunakan ketek sehingga sepatu itu harus kami jinjing, kami pegang. Kemudian dengan pembangunan yang diberikan pemerintah ke arah sekolah kami, kontribusi yang kami rasakan begitu sangat besar.
Pada saat ini, kurikulum dari pendidikan SMA itu ada muatan pendidikan pembelajaran tentang pajak khususnya pada materi APBN dan APBD. Nah, dalam mengajarkan pajak atau mengenalkan pajak sebagai tulang punggung pembangunan di negara kita yang tercipta ini, saya sering sampaikan kepada peserta didik bahwa anak-anak sekalian, APBN di negara kita ini merupakan sumber terbesar dari pembangunan nasional, dan 70% diantaranya itu berasal dari pajak.
Harapan saya sebagai guru kepada siswa-siswi saya adalah siswa-siswi saya memiliki jiwa sadar pajak dan peduli akan pentingnya pajak. Saya juga berharap ke depannya siswa-siswi saya menjadi orang yang sukses, di mana mereka memiliki karir yang cemerlang. Mereka tidak hanya menjadi sebagai seorang pegawai, tetapi juga mereka menjadi seorang pengusaha, di mana mereka nantinya akan berkontribusi untuk negara melalui dengan membayar pajak dari penghasilan yang mereka terima.
Saya berharap nantinya siswa saya akan menjadi orang yang sukses, memiliki penghasilan yang bagus, dan memiliki karir yang bagus, sehingga dapat berkontribusi dengan negara melalui pajak.
Kami berharap pajak menjadi sarana pemerataan pendidikan yang berada di daerah terpencil seperti kami, sehingga kami dapat sama dengan daerah-daerah maju atau di kota-kota lain dalam mutu pendidikan. Tentunya kami yakin di saat pajak kuat, Indonesia maju.
Karena saya yakin ketika pajak kuat, Indonesia maju.
Karena saya yakin ketika pajak kuat, Indonesia maju.
Yuk anak-anak, mari kita sama-sama kita teriakkan pajak kuat, Indonesia maju. Sekali lagi, pajak kuat, Indonesia maju.
Pandemi COVID-19 jauh lebih dari sekedar krisis kesehatan. COVID-19 memberikan dampak yang luas dalam kehidupan sosial dan ekonomi di seluruh dunia, termasuk di Indonesia. Ancaman resesi terus membayangi perekonomian Indonesia. Sejak kuartal pertama tahun 2020, banyak perusahaan yang mulai menutup usahanya karena daya beli yang semakin lesu. Tingkat pengangguran juga terus meningkat. Kondisi keterpurukan ekonomi ini dialami oleh seluruh jenis usaha di Indonesia, termasuk usaha mikro kecil menengah atau UMKM. Di Indonesia, UMKM memegang peranan penting dalam menjalankan perekonomian nasional. UMKM menyumbang lebih dari 60% PDB Indonesia dan menyediakan lapangan kerja bagi jutaan pekerja yang dapat mengurangi pengangguran. Data historis juga menunjukkan bahwa pada masa krisis ekonomi di Indonesia tahun 1998, UMKM terbukti menjadi salah satu sektor utama yang tetap bertahan di masa-masa sulit serta menopang perekonomian Indonesia. Berdasarkan fakta-fakta tersebut, saat ini pemerintah Indonesia memberikan perhatian yang cukup besar terhadap pemulihan ekonomi UMKM. Dalam menghadapi pandemi COVID-19, pemerintah Indonesia melaksanakan program pemulihan ekonomi nasional seperti pemberian subsidi bunga pinjaman dan penjaminan pinjaman modal kerja bagi UMKM. Di bidang perpajakan, pemerintah melalui Direktorat Jenderal Pajak memberikan beberapa insentif perpajakan seperti pemotongan pajak penghasilan orang pribadi yang ditanggung pemerintah, pembebasan pajak penghasilan impor, pengurangan angsuran pajak penghasilan bulanan, PPN ditanggung pemerintah, serta pajak penghasilan ditanggung pemerintah untuk UMKM. Direktorat Jenderal Pajak juga menawarkan program pengembangan usaha yang disediakan khusus untuk para pelaku UMKM, yaitu Business Development Services, merupakan salah satu strategi pembinaan dan pengawasan bagi wajib pajak UMKM dengan membina dan mendorong pengembangan usahanya secara berkelanjutan. Strategi pendidikan bertujuan untuk meningkatkan kesadaran pajak, keterlibatan, dan kepatuhan, sambil memberikan dukungan pengetahuan kepada bisnis UMKM. Program Business Development Service telah direncanakan melalui penelitian dan kajian sejak tahun 2014 dan telah resmi ditetapkan sebagai bagian dari kegiatan edukasi perpajakan sejak tahun 2018. Saat ini, BDS telah diterapkan di seluruh kantor pelayanan pajak di Indonesia. Untuk mendukung pengembangan bisnis UMKM, DJP menyediakan berbagai tema pendidikan dalam pelaksanaan program BDS, antara lain Business Scale Up, Branding, Digital Marketing, Ekspor, Pengadaan, Pembukuan dan Akuntansi, Legal dan Perizinan, Keuangan, dan Perpajakan. Ada dua metode dalam BDS, metode independen dan metode kolaboratif. Dengan metode independen, KPP melaksanakan pembinaan usaha kepada UMKM secara mandiri, tanpa kerjasama dari instansi lain. Dalam metode kolaborasi, DJP dapat bekerja sama dengan lembaga pemerintah, asosiasi bisnis, kementerian, serta pihak lain. Dalam situasi normal, BDS dilaksanakan oleh seluruh kantor pajak di Indonesia yang merupakan bagian dari kegiatan edukasi perpajakan. Namun, dalam situasi pandemi COVID-19, DJP telah melakukan penyesuaian dengan memperhatikan protokol kesehatan. Seluruh kegiatan edukasi perpajakan harus dilaksanakan secara daring, tanpa kontak fisik dengan wajib pajak, termasuk dalam penerapan BDS. BDS saat ini dilakukan dengan menyelenggarakan webinar daring melalui aplikasi dan media sosial resmi DJP.
Dengan program BDS yang dijalankan Direktorat Jenderal Pajak ini, kami bisa bekerja sama untuk mengembangkan usaha kami.
Awalnya saya bingung, gimana sih cara promosi produk saya? Untungnya ada BDS, jadi saya ketemu UMKM lain dan sharing-sharing gimana sih cara promosi yang efektif.
Kami jadi lebih nyaman mengembangkan produksi, juga bisa lebih disiplin dalam mencatat keuangan usaha kami.
Dengan adanya bimbingan kantor pajak, kami membayar pajak sangat berguna. Bayar pajak tidak sia-sia.
Pada awal kita menjalankan perusahaan ini, kita selalu mendapatkan kesulitan dalam mengelola keuangan yang belum bisa memisahkan uang pribadi sama uang perusahaan. Tapi seiring dengan waktu, alhamdulillah kita bisa mengelola keuangan dengan baik.
Kami berharap dengan adanya program BDS ini bisa memberikan dampak positif untuk UMKM seperti kami yang nantinya kami bisa berkembang di kemudian hari.
Seluruh UMKM di Indonesia harus tahu apa itu program BDS.
Ternyata Direktorat Jenderal Pajak peduli loh sama kita.
Terima kasih BDS, bersama BDS UMKM Maju.
Terima kasih BDS, bersama BDS UMKM Maju.
Terima kasih BDS, bersama BDS UMKM Maju.
Bersama BDS UMKM Maju.
Terima kasih BDS, bersama BDS UMKM Maju.
Terima kasih BDS bersama BDS UMKM Maju.
All of us at the Directorate General of Taxes are fully committed to helping the small and medium enterprises in growing their businesses and complying with the tax regulations for a better Indonesia. Bersama DJP UMKM Maju.
Ladies and gentlemen, we welcome you to the Jakti Budi Bakti Auditorium, head office of Directorate General of Taxes for the International Tax Conference 2022.
We welcome you with a glorious opening, the slice of our traditional cultural dance performance.
This dance will be performed by the DGT dance community, which yesterday became the third champion on Hari Uang Republik Indonesia.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome
Tari Kreasi Nusantara. The Honorable Panelist, Assistant of Minister for Tax Compliance, Ministry of Finance of Republic of Indonesia, Bapak Yon Arsal. Deputy Commissioner of the Public Groups and International of Australian Taxation Office, Mr. Hetta Thompson.
Taxation and Fiscal Policy Expert of the Deutsche Gesellschaft für internationale Zusammenarbeit, Bapak Mahfud Siddiq. Special Advisor for Strategic Communication Office, Ministry of Finance of Republic of Indonesia, Bapak Justinus Prastowo. Our respected Secretary of Directorate General, Directorate General of Taxes, Bapak Penny Hirijanto.
Director of Tax Dissemination, Services and Public Relations, Bapak Neil Madrinor. Excellent to official within the Ministry of Finance, Republic of Indonesia.
Representatives from our partner donor agencies, ministry or agencies in the Republic of Indonesia, distinguished guests, all audiences, ladies and gentlemen. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good afternoon and welcome to the International Tax Conference 2022, taking place at the head office of the Directorate General of Taxes and streamed on the live YouTube Ditjen Pajak RI on Wednesday, 7th of December 2022.
My name is Reza Meladi and my partner is
Rima Budi Arti,
and we are delighted to be your master of ceremony at this event.
Ladies and gentlemen, before we start our event, first of all, let us express our gratitude toward the Almighty, whose blessings are always with us, so that we all can be here in a good condition and healthy. Before we start our event, let us pray together so that our agenda today can run smoothly. Ladies and gentlemen, pray according to the procedure of each religion and belief, and pray begins. Amen.
Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, as a form of pride and fostering a sense of love for the motherland, let us sing the Indonesia National Anthem. The audience are asked to stand. Audience, you may have a seat.
Ladies and gentlemen, in order to support G20 Indonesian presidency and taxation reform, the Directorate General of Taxes is holding an International Tax Conference 2022 with the theme G20 Indonesian presidency, achieving a stronger and more sustainable world recovery through international and national tax reform. And this event is held in collaboration between the Directorate General of Taxes, Australian Taxation Office or ATO, and Deutsche Gesellschaft für internationale Zusammenarbeit or GIZ.
Ladies and gentlemen, this activity has been carried out since May 2022 with the opening of the taxation call for paper. 172 submitted paper on taxation call for paper have gone through several steps of feasibility and substantive assessment by editor and reviewer, both from internal and external of DGT. This assessment selected the 35 best paper that had been presented on the parallel session yesterday, Monday, December 5th, 2022. And today is the final event of the series of International Tax Conference 2022.
Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, let us watch the video series of activities, event of taxation call for paper 2022.
Taking place at the Directorate General of Taxes, and welcome to the parallel stations taxation
Call for paper taking place at the head office of the Directorate General of Taxes on Monday.
Wish you all in good health and good condition so we can all join this event today with a happy condition.
Would like to proudly congratulate all 35 best papers authors.
Ladies and gentlemen, that was a series of activity for the taxation call for paper 20 and 22, starting from the process of submitting manuscripts, reviewer and judging to parallelization and research writing workshop.
Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, opening today's event, now we would like to invite the Honorable Director of Tax Disseminations, Services and Public Relations to give welcoming remarks. Bapak Neil Maldrinur, the floor is yours.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Om Swastiastu, Namo Buddhaya. Good afternoon and greeting to all of us. The Honorable, the representative of Directorate General and Board of Directors in the Ministry of Finance, representative from Ministry of Education, Research and Technology, Ministry of Defense and Ministry of Religions, representatives of University, Rectorate and Tax Centers, representative of international organization, and also respected panelists, Mr. Yon Arsal, Expert Assistant to the Minister of Finance for Tax Compliance, Mr. Hector Thompson, Deputy Commissioner International at Australian Taxation Office, ATO, and Mr. Mahfud Siddiq, Taxation and Fiscal Policy Expert of GIZ, authors, reviewers, editor of Taxation Call of Paper 2022, and all distinguished ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I'm sorry to inform you that the Director General of Taxes, Mr. Surya Utomo, will not be able to join us today due to an urgent meeting that he has to attend. But he sent his best regards for all of us and highly appreciate your presence in the International Tax Conference 2022. Thank you to each and every one of you for being here with us today. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, let us express to our gratitude towards the Almighty whose blessings are always with us so that we all can be here in good condition and health. It's such an honor for me to deliver reports as well as welcoming remarks in the International Tax Conference 2022 today, 7 December 2022 at Shakti Bukti Bhakti Auditorium, the headquarters of the Directorate General of Taxes. As well, all realize that research is an important part of an organization business process to carry out of its function. Research is very useful in providing information to develop policies, regulatory products, services, human resource, organization, information technology, and many others. For these reasons, research must always be developed on an ongoing basis. In this opportunity, I would like to inform you that the Directorate General of Taxes organize research permits for educational institutions and the wider community regarding research in taxation. The goal is to carry out the task and function of tax education institution. To align with needs, the research can be directed to make an analysis of the impact of policy and studies in the preparation of tax regulations. In order to build a research environment as part of the tax awareness inclusion programs, DGT organizes scientific activities which are held every 2 years in the forms of taxation call for paper and tax conference. This event has been held since 2018 and this year is the third one. In 2018 and 2020, taxation call for papers will follow by National Tax Conference. This year, we try to improve the quality of conference by organizing an international tax conference. So this event today is actually the first international tax conference held by DGT. In this taxation call for paper and the International Tax Conference 2022, the theme is G20 Indonesian Presidency, achieving a stronger and more sustainable world recovery through international and national tax reform. Taxation call for paper and International Tax Conference 2022 are held with the following substem: tax compliance, tax regulation, information and technology of taxation, human resource and organization, tax education and dissemination, tax services, law enforcement of taxation, business process of taxation, and also international taxation. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, the taxation call for paper 2022 submission has been started since May 2022 with a total of 217 applicants and 172 paper submissions. This number is higher than last two call for papers, which was only 87 and 118. The backgrounds of the participants were lecturers and students from various university and educational institutions, as well as DGT employees. And also, in order to find best paper, we use double-blind method selection and review to select for 35 best papers. Those 35 best papers have been presented at the parallel session last Monday, 5th December 2022. And of course, since we call it International Tax Conference, the presentation were performed in the English. This parallel session started the series of events of the International Tax Conference 2022. In addition, as a form of appreciation for the 35 best papers in the taxation call for papers 2022, the DGT, in collaboration with GIZ, held a research paper writing workshop for authors offline at the Century Park Hotel, Jakarta on Tuesday, December 6, 2022, yesterday. In this workshop, we invited professional speakers from the National Research and Innovation Agency, or BRIN, and international research of the DGT, who have been involved in research, scientific journal writing, and journal publication. The article that we are presented in the parallel session last Monday will be submitted to the publication process in the Science Tech, an electronic accredited journal managed by DGT, which holds SINTA 4 accreditation. And from the 35 best papers, 4 winners were selected and will be announced later on today at the end of today's session, the main event of the International Tax Conference 2022. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, it is also an honor for me to inform you that in this International Tax Conference, we will have a panel discussion with 3 important speakers. The panel discussion will be guided by moderator Dr. Matondang Elsa Siburian, Section Chief of International Tax Agreement and Cooperation to DGT. And the panelists are Mr. Yon Arsal, Assistant for Minister for Tax Compliance, Ministry of Finance Indonesia, Hector Thompson, Deputy Commissioner International at Australian Tax Office, or ATO, Dr. Mahfud Siddiq, Taxation and Fiscal Policy Expert of GIZ, and we highly appreciate the commitment from our moderators and speakers as it brings so much meaning to this conference. This conference will also provide an agenda for academics in the field of taxation to update their knowledge and skills in the field of taxation, produce innovative contribution. Moreover, it's also useful as a tax awareness education method for students, researchers, and public. It is hoped that this conference will help in creating a generation of people who are aware and obedient to tax in the future. Last but not least, I would like to request Mr. Penny Hardianto, the Secretary of General, to deliver Mr. Suryo Tomo keynote speech in this conference. And on his behalf, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your kind attention. Please enjoy the conference and wishing you all have a fruitful discussion with the panelists. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you, Bapak Nel Marino, for the welcoming remarks. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, before we go into the next agenda, let us see the video of the journey of the call for paper and tax conference that has been held by DGT since 2018.
Dalam acara Konferensi Nasional Perpajakan 2020.
Bagaimana kami mengapresiasi atas hasil karya-karya yang sudah dilakukan di dalam call for paper ini.
Diikuti hampir 2.000 peserta
Pajak melalui email
dalam jurnal Science Tax di tahun 2021 dapat memberikan kontribusi yang inovatif dalam membangun keilmuan dan tata kelola perpajakan di Indonesia.
Munculkan ide-ide inovatif dan terus meningkatkan kemampuan kita untuk bisa memperbaiki dan terus menyempurnakan kebijakan kita.
Pajak kuat, Indonesia maju. Selamat datang.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, that was the video of journey of the call for paper and tax conference that has been held by DGT since 2018. Ladies and gentlemen, in order to build a research environment as a part of the Tax Awareness Inclusion Program, DGT organized scientific activities which are held in every 2 years in the term of taxation call for paper and also taxation conference.
This has been held since 2018, the first call for paper and conference. In 2020, the second year of the event was held fully online, and this year is the third event. This is the first international call for paper and the first international tax conference held by DGT.
And as Bapak Neil Maldrin have told before that from the 35 best papers, 4 winners has been selected and will be announced at the end of this International Tax Conference today. And the 35 papers that have been presented by the speakers, it will be submitted to the Publications Journal of the Science Tax, an electronic journal managed by DGT. So here, once again, we would like to congratulate the 35 base papers that have been selected through assessment, substantive assessment by the reviewers and also by the 4 judges. And congratulate, and in the end of the sessions for today, we will know the 4 winners of the taxation call for paper.
And Rima, this activity has been carried out since May 2022 with the opening of the taxation call for paper. More than 200 applicants and 172 submitted paper on taxation call for paper have gone through several stages for civility and substantive assessment by editor and reviewer from both internal and external of DGT. And also this assessment selected the 35 best paper that had been presented in the parallel session last Monday, December 5, 2022.
And today is the final event of the series of International Tax Conference 2022.
And also we would like to thank for all reviewers and all editors who have been here to join the International Tax Conference 2022. Thank you for the contribution so this event can be run so well and smoothly. And for information about the judges that has been selected the 4 winners for best papers from the 35 best papers in taxation call for paper. The judges are?
Yes, and the judges for taxation call for paper 2022 are first Ibu Inge Diana Rismawanti, Head of Subdirectorate of Tax Dissemination, Directorate of Tax Dissemination, Services and Public Direction, Directorate General of Taxes.
And the second judge, Bapak Eureka Putra, Head of Subdirectorate of Policies Impact, Directorate of Potential, Compliance and Revenue DGT.
And the third, Bapak Yon Arsal, Head of Jakarta Gambir 1 Tax Office of DGT.
At the end of these sessions, we will know the 4 best papers that have been selected. And we would like to say, welcome Bapak Penny Hirjanto. Please, you may have a seat. Please give applause for Bapak Penny Hirjanto.
Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, for the next event, now we would like to invite, on behalf of Director General of Taxes, Bapak Penny Hirjanto, Secretary of Directorate General, to deliver the keynote speech. Bapak Penny Hirjanto, you may have the floor.
Thank you, terima kasih. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Om Swastiastu, Namo Buddhaya. Good afternoon and greetings to all of you. The Honorable Representative of Director General and Board of Directors, the Ministry of Finance, Representative from Ministry of Education, Research and Technology, Ministry of Defense, Ministry of Religion, and other government institutions, representative of university, rectorate, and tax centers, representative of international organization, respected panelists, Bapak Yon Arsal, expert assistant to the Minister of Finance for the tax compliance, Mr. Hector Thompson, Deputy Commissioner International at Australian Taxation Office, and Bapak Mahfud Siddiq, Taxation and Fiscal Policy Expert of Dutch Gesellschaft International Zusammenarbeit, or GIZ. Authors, reviewer, and editors of Taxation Call of Paper 2022, distinguished guests, and all participants. First of all, I would like to say an apology of the Director General, Mr. Surya Utomo, who cannot be here with us today as he has an urgent agenda representing the Ministry of Finance in an important meeting. For that reason, he asked me to deliver his keynote speech in the International Tax Conference 2022, so please allow me to do it. We thank God who has blessed us with strength and health so we can attend the International Tax Conference 2022 this afternoon with this theme, Road to G20 Indonesian Presidency, achieving a stronger and more sustainable world recovery through international and national tax reform. As we know that the taxes have a significant role in the state budget. This is shown by the proportion of tax revenue, which reached an average of 75% of the total state budget over the last 5 years. This means that until now, tax revenue are still the main source of revenue to fund government administration and spending while maintaining the investment climate and economic condition, especially during and after the pandemic COVID-19. We are very grateful to all taxpayers who have contributed for last year's tax revenue, which made it possible for us in the Directorate General of Taxes to achieve the target. Hopefully, the same thing will happen this year. However, tax revenue in Indonesia is still considered not optimal when review of the tax ratio as one of indicator that is often used as a reference for assessing the performance of a country tax revenue compared to the other countries. In addition to tax ratio, another indicator that shows that the potential for taxation in Indonesia is not yet optimal is through data on the compliance with the reporting of tax return. Even though the compliance ratio increased each year, there is still the need for the DGT to take several approaches through law enforcement, increasing taxpayer services, as well as educating taxpayer. In this occasion today, allow me to discuss more on education issue. We are in the DGT has been developing the tax awareness inclusion program through collaboration and coordination methods between ministry and institutions such as Ministry of Education, Research and Technology, Ministry of Defense, and Ministry of Religion, as well as University and Tax Center. We really appreciate your presence today in this conference and hoping that our work together will never end it. Furthermore, several initiatives related to research have been carried out by the DGT. In line the objective of the inclusion program, among those of our taxation call for paper and National Tax Conference. We hear from Mr. Neil Madrin Noor previously that this year is the third time and today conference is also the first International Tax Conference held by the DGT. Congratulations on your achievement, Mr. Neil and teams. Research and development provide advice to the government in improving tax administration as well as become input in the decision-making regarding tax regulation. In addition, research can be a channel for tax awareness education through academics in the form of tax study, which eventually enrich tax literacy. Therefore, it is our great hope that we invite academics and practitioners to continue contribute in the form of tax research, so that it can increase access for the public to become aware and obedient of taxes. And thus the level of taxpayer compliance and also tax revenue become more optimal. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, there are other things that I need to convey, as well as all we know, the government of the Republic of Indonesia issued the law of harmonization of tax regulation in 2021. This law was issued in the momentum of economic recovery after the COVID-19 pandemic. The pandemic has had a substantial negative impact on our economy. Since 2020, part of the government budget has been relocated to deal with the pandemic. At the same time, the business world also was declining. The combination of this condition urged the government to design a law that allowed the state budget deficit to exceed 3% of the GDP until 2022. However, in the 2023, it's required that the government has to set the budget back to deficit below 3% of GDP. It means that extraordinary steps need to be taken to increase state revenue. Therefore, tax increment is a necessity. Distinguished audience, Indonesia, on its tax reform agenda, which has been commenced in 1983, has transformed significantly from many aspects such as administrative affairs and the way the government to implement the tax policy. These measures have aligned with global tax trend. The issuance of the law of harmonization of tax regulation also coincided with the momentum of tax reform. The Directorate General of Taxes wants to create a fair, healthy, effective, and accountable government revenue institution in this tax reform. There are several urgencies for the implementation of tax reform, namely, to create a solid and equitable tax base, a healthy and sustainable state budget, and a high economic growth. There are several points that I need to highlight from this law. First, introduction of the National Identity Number, or we call NIK, as the identity number of individual taxpayer. In this regard, the NIK, this is like a single identity number, will directly replace to the role of the tax identification number in terms of paying individual domestic taxes. Meanwhile, this provision was made in order to integrate population data with taxation database. Second, voluntary disclosure program, which implemented from January 1, 2022 until June 30, 2022. It was an opportunity provided to taxpayers to voluntarily disclosure their undeclared tax obligation by means of income tax payment based upon asset disclosure. The DGT collected around 61 trillion from this program, so thank you very much for all taxpayers that took part of this program. Third, introduction of the new individual income tax threshold to provide equitability among taxpayers. The effective taxpayer will realize the impact of this regulation next year when submitting their tax return. Fourth, for individual entrepreneurs who have a gross turnover up to 500 million rupiah per year will not be subject to income tax. This is an incentive for small and medium enterprises who have a significant role in the Indonesian economy. Fifth, and other regulation in corporate income tax rate, international taxation, and also carbon tax as an externality tax to protect our environment. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, aligned with the international tax system reform, which consists of two main pillars, those aim of sustainable and inclusive global economic governance by emphasizing the taxation aspect of digital products and services, as well as effort to anticipate cross-border tax avoidance. Therefore, Indonesia, as a member country of the inclusive framework, must also prepare an administrative system and qualified resources for the implementation so that it can effectively boost the domestic tax climate. Following the international tax development, besides the policy reform, we are doing reform on organization, human resources, information technology, database, business process, and institutional cooperation as well. Particularly in the IT reform, we are developing integrated business process in tax administration core system. As we know, digitalization can play a key role in helping to the tax authority lower compliance and administrative costs, collect more revenue more efficiently, enhance transparency and service to taxpayer, and accommodate big data flow. I kindly request to all stakeholders of the DGT to support this program, as there will be time for us to inform you in more detail about the changes in the new integrated system. Distinguished audience, in this conference today, we have panelists from the Australia Tax Office and representative of GIZ. I do hope that in the near future constructive Discussion will occur between the government, academics, and international practitioners who attend in this conference. Thus, there will be many high-quality recommendations from the stakeholders to the government, especially to the DGT. In the same time, we are all reaching to achieving a stronger and more sustainable world recovery through international and national tax reform. Thank you very much for the panelists. We are so grateful to have you in this conference. I'm sending my gratitude also to the Organization Committee of the Taxation Call for Paper and the International Tax Conference 2022, who has put a lot of effort to make it happen. And to all participate authors who bring papers benefit for us today. Congratulations for the 35 best papers which have passed the editors and reviewer checking. Thank you all editors and reviewer. You are all important asset of the DGT. And not to forget to the judges that have selected for winners from the 35 best paper. I'm sure it was not easy job to do. We will find out about the winner in the couple of hours, so be patient everyone. That concludes my keynote speech in this conference. Thank you very much for your attention. Good afternoon and welcome to this very first International Tax Conference 2022. I wish you all good luck and stay healthy. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Director General of Taxes, Bapak Suryo Utomo.
Thank you, Bapak Penny Hirjanto, for the keynote speech. Ladies and gentlemen, as we know that research is always important and useful for the institutions and organizations, especially for creating tax regulations in a better for the future. And in order to build a research environment as a part of Tax Awareness Inclusion Program, DGT organizes scientific activities which are held every 2 years as a form of taxation call for paper and also tax conference.
Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, in 2022 is the third event, the first International Call for Paper and the first International Tax Conference. Taxation Call for Paper and Tax Conference has been held since 2018, the first Call for Paper and Conference. In 2020, the second year of Taxation Call for Paper and Tax Conference was held. The event was held fully online, and this year is the third event, the first International Call for Paper and the first International Tax Conference held by DGT.
Ladies and gentlemen, we would like to inform again that from the 35 best paper, there are 4 winners that have been selected today and will be announced at the end of these sessions. So please be patient for the authors to hear and know the winners. So who will the winners for the taxation for paper 2022? And also the 35 best papers that have been presented, that have been selected and presented in parallel sessions that was held on Monday, 5th of December 2022, those papers will enter the Journal of Publications, Scientex, an electronic journal, Sinta4, managed by a DGT. So please be patient for all the others to wait and to know who is the winner for the taxation call for paper after these panel discussions.
Well, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, the next agenda is a panel discussion. This session will be guided by the moderator, Ibu Matondang Elsa Siburian. Sectionship of International Tax Agreement and Cooperation to Directorate General of Taxes. Ibu Matondang Elsa Siburian, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Rima and Reza. Before I start our session for today, good afternoon to you, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to acknowledge our colleagues from the representative of the Ministry of Education, Ministry of Defense, Ministry of Religious, and the representative from the university, and also representative from the Ministry of Finance. And I also would like to acknowledge Pak Penny, is he still here? Or and then also the Director of Tax Dissemination, Pak Neil, and the Echelon 1 and Echelon 2 in the Ministry of Finance, and also the staff of the Minister of Strategic Communication, Pak Justinus. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I am Matondang Elsa Siburian. It will be a very honor for me to host this interactive discussion regarding the digitalization of economics. So, before we enter the discussion, I would like to give a brief introduction about our discussion. The first discussion is regarding the global economics activity. As we know, the global economic activity is powered by digital technology, and it's become more digitized, and new business models emerge immensely. While this transformation brings benefits, it also brings some consideration, especially for the tax administration all around the world, not only for DGT. So, question faced by all the tax authorities is how countries, including Indonesia, with huge market potential, survive or even thrive in this new economic era. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we are lucky today. So, we have the privilege to listen, not only to listen from the Indonesian perspective, but also the point of view of our dearest friends from Australia, as well as from the government partner, GIZ, for today. So, we have here our panelists for today. The first one is Assistant to the Minister of Tax Compliance Affairs, Bapak Yon Arsal. Silakan, Pak. And then the second, the Deputy Commissioner for the Australian Taxation Office, Pak Hector. And then last but not least, Taxation and Fiscal Policy Expert from GIZ, Bapak Mahfud Sidik. Silakan, Pak. Good afternoon, gentlemen, Pak Yon, Pak Hector. Good afternoon, Pak Mahfud. So, before we begin, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to remind you, all the speakers, that each speaker will have 20 minutes for the presentation, and then followed by question and answer at the end. So, the first presenter will be Pak Yon, and then followed by Pak Hector, and then last but not least is Pak Mahfud. So, Excellencies, distinguished participants, without further ado, we like to start the session. Please allow me to introduce our first speaker, Bapak Yon Arsal. Ya, Pak. Well, first, before Pak Yon present his presentation, I would like to describe his CV. Bapak Yon Arsal currently serves as Assistant to the Minister for the Tax Compliance, appointed by the Minister of Finance in 2020. He's in charge in providing advice and recommendation on strategic issues in domestic and international area to the Minister in the field of tax revenue compliance. Pak Yon holds a doctoral degree from the Kobe University from 2007. So, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Pak Yon. The floor is yours, Pak.
Thank you, Cak, for the kind introduction. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good afternoon, everybody. Honorable representative from the Ministry of Finance, Ministry of Education, Ministry of Defense, Ministry of Religion, and the International Organization, and a Special Assistant to the Minister of Finance, Pak Justinus Prastowo, and also for university and tax centers delegates today and all participants. Again, this is a very good opportunity for me to stand here in the first conference, international conference. It's very good, the very good opportunity, and I guess I would like to congratulate the Director General of Taxes and all the people that are involved in this activity. It's a very, very good one. Today I'll be given an assignment to talk about how the Indonesian Minister of Finance and also the DGT actually to adapting to the global challenge and accelerating the national economic recovery through the tax reform. So mainly I will discuss on the several topics, mostly about the tax reform in Indonesia and how we deal with this during the pandemic previously. So can you share the presentation? You already got the file? Okay. So, ada slide-nya belakang? Ada ya? Belum kelihatan belum? Okay, let's go to the slide number 4. The first topic of that I would like to to show you how to update on some issues on the global challenges that are facing now and coming on what the DGT should face later on. I guess now if we took a look at the countries as a whole in the world, we see that there are 4 main problems currently. The first one is that we can see the increasing global inflation due to the low supply disruption caused by the pandemic and also war, combined with the excessive fiscal and monetary policy that are adopted by many countries during the pandemics, so give some stress and pressure on the fiscal side. And like in many countries, we see that, for example, the inflation has been quite sometimes high in many countries. We see, like for example, in UK has been around 7%. Like in the United States, also 7%. Sorry, UK 11%, United States 7.7%, Brazilian 13%, and Europe also 11% something. So, but Indonesia we still, fortunately, we can maintain the quite manageable inflation level at 5.7 rate. So I think it's quite good for Indonesia to start with. And at the same time, in addition to the increasing global inflation, we can also see the liquidity pressures and increasing interest rate. While the countries respond to the high inflation rate by increasing their rate, we can see that how the UK has been increasing 275 percentage point from during the 2022, and US has been increasing 375 basis points. This is a very significant increase, and Brazilian has been increasing 450 basis points on the interest rate. Increasing on the interest rate, you can see that it will attract the global financial market volatility and also the capital outflow, especially from developing countries such as Indonesia, and also give some pressure on the exchange rate. It's kind of the challenges has been quite sometimes you can see observed in Indonesian economy. Even though we can manage the inflation rate quite stable at a very low level, relatively low level, but we can see that kind of the exchange rate quite significantly increased, while at the same time also we can see some the capital outflow during this period. And because of this excessive fiscal and monetary policy during the pandemic period, we can see that there are so many countries now are potentially entering the global debt crisis also, because of there are so many countries with high debt to GDP ratio, more than 60% now, and also because of that it will increase the risk and also the refinancing risk, and also at the same time we can see that there are some risks that many countries in the world will facing the risk of default of more than 60 countries in the world. And at the end, it will rise, of course, the risk of stagflation. And if we can see that in the next slide, This is the main agenda and the main pressure that coming from the global trend currently. And then, fortunately, Indonesia has recorded one of the fastest recovery countries among the G20s and also the ASEAN 6. We can see, like Indonesia here, like in the period of Q1, we are recording the growth of 5%, while the second quarter 5.4, and in the third quarter 5.7. It's quite some. If we compare with the other countries' experience, Indonesia is not the best one, but at least we are better than many other countries in the world. And if we compare to the level of the pre-pandemic levels, it's been growing 6% compared to, like, for example, Japan and Thailand that are still struggling with the economic negative. It means that their economy is not really coming back from the previous pandemic position. The next slide. We can see that in 2022, and many international organizations has been predicted the Indonesian portion is quite stable at 5% growth rate level in, for example, by IMF, and the World Bank 5.1, OECD predicted 4.7, and also from the ADB predicted 5%. But still, the consensus said in consensus mentioned that it is in 2023. In our budget, also we stated that on the macro assumption, the growth rate for the 2023 will be around 5.3%. So I think all in all, then we can see that hopefully that Indonesian economic prospect for 2022 and 2023 is still robust. But again, there are so many challenges ahead, like I mentioned before, the inflation rate, the high interest rate in many countries, and there are some tendencies to be the debt problem in the future. The next slide, we can see that compared to the peers, the Indonesian domestic inflation is also quite relatively moderate. You can see that for the overall the inflation rate, we have 5.7, but if we take a look at and only the core inflation, which means the core inflation is the inflation for many products and services except for the foods and the energy, which is a kind of volatile, we can see that the inflation rate is around 3.3%, meaning that in the long run, we can still maintain the quite good and moderate result of the inflation, even though we can see some significant changes or significant increase on the administered price product, which is actually the energy consumption, and also we still have challenges on the volatile foods inflation, which is imported by the rate of 7.1. It's still quite challenging for Indonesia. But overall, we can see compared to the other countries, the rate of 5.7% of the inflation rate has been quite significantly lower than any countries. In many other countries, for example, like Russia, Italy, and European Union, that around 11%. And compared to the other countries, there are Argentina and Turkey that already have 80% of the inflation rate. So it's kind of quite good in terms of the performance, economic performance. However, we still have many challenges ahead, especially for the Directorate General of Taxes in collecting revenue in 2023. You can see that in the next slide. In the next slide, we see at least there are 3 points that are addressing the challenges for the DGT in collecting revenue in 2023. The first one actually is related to the high revenue baseline in 2022, which is actually, Ses Dijen mentioned before, there are several, because of the implementation of tax harmonization law, especially from the voluntary disclosure program, PPS program, we collect like 60 trillion rupiah amount of money. This is one-off policy that cannot be repeated this year. So we're gonna lose that kind of money this 2023. No more money coming from the voluntary disclosure program. And the other one is also related to because of the fact that in 2022 we experienced a very high commodity price, and somehow including the CPO and many others commodity price that also give the benefit for the DGT in collecting some money on that. So we can see that it will not be repeated, of course, 2023, again becoming the challenges for DGT, as the baseline has been quite significantly high in 2022. And also the commodity price, you can see there, but based on the many prediction on the commodity market outlook, the World Bank 2022, they predict that the commodity price will be lowering next year. So it's coming challenging for Indonesia. And also the third problem is about the global economic and political volatility. There is a war over there in Russia and Ukraine, and also some global regional tendency between China and Taiwan and any others problem in the geopolitics, and also because of the increasing inflation in many countries in the world, also increase the risk of recession and stagflation, and also increasing the global interest rate could trigger also the capital outflow that might be hamper the economic recovery during this recovery process in Indonesia. And at the same time, we see that the global economic moderation in any countries in the world, also with limited Indonesian capacity or in local industry to export their product to any countries in the world. We are already seeing this kind of the phenomena in many products, especially on the textile and textile industry related one. So we are now seeing that many industries, especially in the textile and related industry, has been doing kind of layoff because of the slowing demand from many other countries, especially from the developed countries, because in many other countries like Europe now is entering the very critical session with the high inflation, especially in energy and food. It's becoming difficult for them also to spend on additional expenditure on secondary and tertiary products. So again, because of that, some Indonesian export has been delayed or something has been cut. So because of that, also our economic has facing kind of significant challenges, especially because the industry has to lay off their employee, and this becoming problem. Probably is coming challenges for us also in 2023. But in the prospect of tax revenue, fortunately, during the period of 2022 is quite significant recovery for us. It's not really the Nike shape, like what they call quote-unquote Nike shape, but fortunately we experienced the V-shaped recovery from in terms of the tax revenue perspective. In 2020, we experienced a very significant drop, 19% growth rate minus at the time. By 2021, we experienced quite a significant growth, coming back to 19% growth rate by collecting 1,278 trillion rupiah in 2021, DGTs only. And 2022, by the middle terms assessment, we expect to collect more than 600.8 trillion rupiah, which is outlook. We can see that is more than 25% increase compared to the what we realized in 2021, and compared to what we are achieving by last month. I think the target or the outlook of 1,600 might be passed by the DGT this year. So I think it's kind of the good performance by DGT in 2022. But again, because of so many challenges, the question is what will happen next year or in the tax collection. Now, because of quite a challenges, and then the answer will be on how DGT can continue the process of reform, and again I'll touch on the issue later on. And the next slide, I would like to touch on kind of the issue related to the DGT role in during the pandemic era. Next slide, please. Next slide. And during the period of 2020 to 2022, the government has launched the National Economic Recovery Program and spending a lot of money and to support the program. 2022, we spent 580 trillion rupiah. 2021, around 659 trillion. And 2022, this year, we spent already 456 trillion rupiah. And DGT is coming, the Minister of Finance also designed, is very interested, that usually the DGT has been assigned to collect tax revenue. It is the main job. But during the pandemic, DGT has been also assigned to give some incentive for the work, for the business work, to the small and medium enterprises and the people in order to support them struggling during the pandemic era. And then at least in the 6 area that the government support during the pandemic, actually the health, small businesses, sectoral and local government, social protection, corporation, business incentives, at least DGT and Minister of Finance has been playing a role at least in the 3 area of that, the health, small businesses and business incentives. How do we do it during this process? We can see in the next slide. We give that a kind of what we call the permanent support through the tax expenditure, kind of the sacrificing the revenue for the current year by collecting revenue for the next year. This kind of what we have been doing for many years. But temporary support, like I mentioned in the right side of this picture, we can see there are at least three components we did during this pandemic. The first one is business liquidity support by giving some discount for the monthly payment of the corporate, giving them some relaxation of the cash flow support to keep them afloat, and also we give some small and medium enterprises support by giving the tax cut 0% for the small and medium enterprises during the pandemic. And we also give the household income support by giving them some demand for some support for the employee with a certain level of salary. The government give them subsidy, kind of subsidy, without no tax at all for their income. So hopefully it will increase the taxable household. So meaning giving them the capacity to earn more and then to spend more. So kind of this support has been given during this pandemic level. And also we give the pandemic countermeasures program, especially in the health area, by supporting many activities by giving them some incentive, including the vaccine and also the medical equipment or something like that. And the result of that, the next 2 slides, I guess. Next slide. And the result has been quite extensive during the 2 years period, and we have 2020 and 2021. The output is quite significant. We are expanding like 140 trillion rupiah of tax incentive during the 2 period, and there are so many people are enjoying the benefits. For the small and medium enterprises, at least 250,000 small and medium enterprises enjoying the benefit during the pandemic level. And especially for the household income, we are giving the benefit for more than 2 million taxpayers, 2 million employees that are being given benefit. And then also for some big ticket items, we give them like automobile industry and also the property housing, then also becoming very good at supporting the economic as a whole. And we can say that how this kind of the support has been increasing, has been supporting the economy to grow, especially in some certain area and some certain sectors, especially in the automotive and housing sectors. And the third part, I would like to say, touch on the issues of tax reform in Indonesia. It's very brief. Since 2017, we already launched the, can you go to the slide number 16, please? Yeah, we have done several reform since 2017. It's kind of very comprehensive reform. There are 5 main agenda in this reform: the organization, human resource, business process, taxation, law, regulation, and information system and database. Pak Ses already mentioned some area related to the regulation reform, especially by introducing the tax harmonization law, and also we are doing kind of the reform in many other aspects that are also very important for us to grow and to maintain the sustainability of the revenue for the future. And if we take a look at the slide 18, for the tax law itself, we can see there are so many support that has been given, especially from the VAT rate. We give some exemption, we review some exemption, while also increasing the general rate and tariff. We have collected quite a lot of money and quality of income revenue from this support, this reform. At least 7 trillion rupiah per month we collect in order because of this kind of the reform. But at the same time, in the income tax area, we are giving the sense that we support the small and medium enterprises by introducing the gross turnover allowance for small businesses if they receive less than 500 million rupiah per year, they don't have to pay tax at all. And also we maintain our corporate tax to 22%, right? Similar to what other countries doing in the Southeast Asian countries. And kind of this reform has been quite successful also, but there are so many homework still left. We introducing also the carbon tax in this our tax regulation reform, but still a long way to go to do that. And the last part of the presentation, probably I will touch on the issues of the international, the global tax issue. Please go to the slide 15. From the international tax perspective, Indonesia has been committing to support what they has been discussing on the international platform now, like our G20 has been concrete deliverable of international tax agenda that has been mentioned during the G20, like how should we support the commitment of the Indonesian government to support the implementation of the Pillar 1 or Pillar 2. Like, can you go to the slide number 16, please? And we expect that in 2022, 2023, in the first semester, will be kind of the multilateral convention on the Pillar 1 will be signed, hopefully. And then Indonesia, DGT especially in this area, has also been ready by preparing some regulation in order to be able to implement this Pillar 2 and Pillar 1 and Pillar 2 in the process later on, and imposing this kind of regulation into the tax harmonization law. And also we are supporting the tax transparency, like what has been committed by many many leaders, and tax transparency, especially in the area of the crypto asset currency, and also has been quite sometimes. And I think Indonesia and DGT has been kind of the pioneer also, introducing the tax on the crypto asset and the financial technology has been quite successful also. Sometimes we introduced in April this year, and quite significant improvement on the tax administration as well as managing the crypto asset and financial technology. And finally, in doing the kind of this, implementing this kind of international cooperation, we also have, go to the last slide, I guess, slide 18. The DGT has been also cooperating with many agencies, and I would like to say thank you for any supporting agency that has been doing cooperation with the DGT, especially Australian Taxation Office, National Tax Agency, Japan. We also get many support from the international organization, GIZ, Prospera, and also we get support from the World Bank, IMF, ADB, and also many others institutions. It has been becoming quite successful cooperation in my opinion. There are so many things that has been achieved. Many international organizations, including also the ATO and NTA and many others, tax authority has also contributed in discussing with DGT in designing the tax reform, the current tax reform, and because there are so many areas that has been reforming so far. So at least, and I expected that in the future, the cooperation with the international organization, also with our counterpart in the future will be strengthened, will be improved, so that it will help us and it will help DGT in helping them to accelerate and improve the quality of the reform that has been going on so far. So again, this is to conclude my presentation today. Sorry for taking 1 or 2 more minutes than 20 minutes, Bu Elsa. Again, thank you very much for your attention. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you, Pak Yon, for your enlightening presentation. Especially, it's very glad to hear that DGT, Indonesia, especially DGT, is able to adapt to global challenge in a volatile situation. A huge applause for Pak Yon, please. Thank you. Pak Yon, if I may summarize some of your points, the first one is, I emphasize, I'm very glad to hear that amidst the shift of global risk from the pandemic to global economic turmoil, Indonesia is recorded as one of the fastest recovery among G20 countries and Asian 6. And then the second, for the upcoming year, Indonesia still face several challenges on the tax revenue, especially on the moderation of commodity prices, as well as the global economic and political volatility. And then you also present how the National Economic Recovery Program, PEN, in the form of several tax incentives must be acknowledged as the main factor of the Indonesia success stories in tackling the pandemic impacts. And then those incentives has been benefiting thousands of taxpayers who are employers, retailers, and small businesses who move the Indonesian economy as a whole. And it's also glad to hear that DGT is undergoing a reform that aims to improve its 5 pillars, including organization, human resources, IT and database, business process, and tax regulation. And also the last one in the global forum, Indonesia also active on developing the 2-pillar solution in addressing the challenge in the digitalizing of economics, advancing tax transparency, and reinforcing international tax cooperation by also work together with other international organizations in supporting our tax organization. Okay, I think that's all from Pak Yon. And then, ladies and gentlemen, please be patient for your questions, because we just have 2 more speakers, also very interesting speakers. Next, our speaker coming from the neighborhood, Pak Hector Thompson. The floor is yours, Pak Hector. I will briefly give you the CV of Pak Hector. Pak Hector is the Deputy Commissioner responsible for international taxation in the ATO, Australian Taxation Office, including the Tax Avoidance Task Force and the ATO's role in the administering of Foreign Acquisition and Takeovers Act. He leads the development of ATO strategy in response to the base erosion, profit shifting, and the tax challenges arising from digitalization, representing Australia at various OECD forums. Throughout his career, Pak Hector has held a range of positions in public policies, in the Tax Treasury and the Department of Prime Minister and the Cabinet, including advice on tax, fiscal, international, and macroeconomic policy matters. And then Pak Hector also holds a graduate degree from the Australian National University. So, Pak Hector, the floor is yours, please.
Thank you for that kind introduction, Ibu Ursa. And good afternoon. Selamat sore, Bapak dan Ibu. I'm delighted to be here in Jakarta to join the Director General of Tax's 2022 International Tax Conference. Even more so, I have to say, during Indonesia's G20 host year, which has been a remarkable success at a time when the global economy faces some of the most significant headwinds I can recall. I'd like to say a special thank you to Pak Penny for his insightful opening remarks, and to my fellow panellists, Pak Yon Adasan, the Assistant to the Minister of Finance for Tax Compliance, and Dr. Mashford Siddiq, former Director of Taxes here at the DGT. I'd also like to say a special thank you to the DGT for the invitation to participate today. I was particularly pleased to receive the invitation because of the close relationship between the DGT and the Australian Taxation Office. I'm not sure if people are aware, but our partnership really commenced in the aftermath of the tragic tsunami that impacted Southeast Asia in 2024. I remember those events well. So I was working in the Australian Treasury's development branch at the time and made a small contribution to the establishment of the Australian-Indonesian Partnership for Reconstruction and Development. And I have many colleagues at the ATO who have fond memories of working with the DGT over the past period. Things such as developing the initial program of work in the early days, also developing advice and guidance for taxpayers, My colleagues always remark to me on how much they enjoy working with their DGT counterparts and how welcome they are made to feel when they do so. So it is an honour to be here all these years later, having seen this partnership grow and flourish. Since 2016, we have had a permanent ATO employee located in Indonesia. The ATO only has 2 employees located outside Australia, one in Paris, supporting our work with the OECD, and the other in Jakarta. And that gives you a good indication of how important the relationship is to us. I'd like to acknowledge the good work of Mr. Grant Leader, who is in the audience today, who's currently in the role. I'm sure many of you know him well. He did instruct me on the blue shirt, being Wednesday here at the DGT. Our relationship with the DGT has evolved from one with a focus on providing training and knowledge sharing to one of a genuine partnership. Grant's role acts as a gateway for the ATO into the DGT and conversely for the DGT into the ATO. This creates a strong bridge between our 2 administrations and has strengthened the relationship over time. Increasingly, we're seeing more peer-to-peer relationships at a working level, where we can collaborate organically, a positive and welcome development. Today, I'd like to highlight 2 areas where we have been working closely together in recent times. The first is in the relation to provision of digital services. As many of you will know, the OECD has a framework it calls Tax Administration 3.0. It sets out a framework for thinking about how the delivery of seamless, integrated and automated systems which allow data to flow from the systems that taxpayers use or already use into our tax administrations. Now, both Indonesia and Australia face geographical challenges in providing essential services to their citizens. Australia, in terms of the great distances between our regional areas and our major cities. And Indonesia, of course, as an archipelago of over 17,000 islands. So technology offers us enormous potential to service taxpayers remotely via digital channels. Through our relationship, we've been working with the DGT in relation to the development of their virtual assistants, Aljuna and Shrikandi, including hosting a delegation to Melbourne in July and a reciprocal visit from the ATO to Jakarta in August. We've worked collaboratively on this project, and I'm very pleased to be here in Jakarta as this service starts to get close to completion. In Australia, we launched our virtual assistant, Alex, in 2016 to take pressure off other service channels by handling non-complex inquiries, and she has most certainly done this. So Alex is available 24 hours a day. She can answer questions on around 437 different topics that can be asked in more than 10,000 different ways. In the last 12 months, she's answered more than 1.3 million questions with a 94% success rate. So we're certainly carrying some key person risk there. The DGT's virtual assistant has some additional capabilities that Alex does not. For example, I understand it will be integrated with a web chat. So if Arjuna and Shrikandi can't answer your question, then they will connect you through to a human on a web chat function that can. At the ATO, we really look forward to understanding how this new features go, and so we can continue to learn from the DGT experience. Another example I would like to highlight is in the area of international tax, the topic of today's seminar, and subject matter which I must confess I'm a little bit more familiar with than building virtual assistants. So it's almost 3 years since the OECD released the Base Erosion and Profit Shifting Action Plan that accelerated a broader trend of tax administrations working cooperatively to address the challenges arising from digitalisation. And I'm very pleased to say this is an area where the engagement between our 2 organisations remains strong. So this year alone, we've had specific discussions on addressing the tax challenges arising from the digitalisation of the economy, and also specific conversations around the existing hybrid mismatch rules. We've also worked collaboratively on other OECD initiatives, such as the Convention on Mutual Administrative Assistance in Taxation Matters and the Common Reporting Standard for the Exchange of Financial Information. Our work focuses, obviously, on implementation and compliance, areas, again, where we have opportunities to engage strongly at an operational level. We've had the opportunity to demonstrate the analytical tools that we use in undertaking our automatic exchange of information as an input into the DGT's work on enhancing their tools in this space. So that brings me to what's next in the international pipeline, and that's working together to implement the two-pillar solution to address the tax challenges arising from the digitalisation of the economy, a key initiative and feature that we see being developed through the G20. In late September, the ATO hosted the OECD Forum of Tax Administration plenary event in Sydney, Australia. And at this event, many tax administrations, including the DGT, spoke about the need to build the skills and capabilities for the implementation of the two-pillar solution. Of course, this is a challenge for both tax administrations and business. So preparing for the new rules is going to be a high priority for both. The new rules are conceptually and technically challenging, and they represent a new way of thinking about the global tax system. At a practical level, they build on the original base erosion and profit shifting work. That has seen a greater degree of cooperation and coordination between tax administrations. Put simply, the better our exchange of information mechanisms are, the more likely it is that these new rules can be administered in both a pragmatic and efficient way. From an implementation perspective, the key focus is currently the development and implementation of Pillar 2, the Global Anti-Base Erosion Rules, or the GLOBE rules. A range of countries, including South Korea, Switzerland, the Netherlands and the United Kingdom, have all announced their intent to implement the GLOBE rules from as early as 1 January 2024. And it's generally understood and acknowledged that they will not require a global consensus or simultaneous implementation to operate and succeed. The Australian Government is yet to make a formal announcement regarding the implementation of Pillar 2, including which elements may be adopted or when domestic implementation could occur. However, the Government has made a pre-election announcement supporting the GLOBE rules, and a consultation paper was released in October of this year, calling for submissions to help inform domestic implementation. At the ATO, we have started thinking about how we would implement the GLOBE rules, and that's on a focus with 4 areas: our lodgement and system upgrades, the ATO's internal capability, what guidance materials will be necessary, and the relevant client engagement, verification and insurance processes. I do need to make the point that at this time, these considerations are very much preliminary only. The GLOBE rules envisage a separate information pack and returns which will require new systems to support lodgement, assurance and compliance. So we are looking to identify the most appropriate technology infrastructure for the efficient storage and information exchange under the GLOBE rules. We need to ensure that you've got data security and that we have data and analytics capabilities to process and analyse that information. While the Common Transmission System has allowed for an expansion of data sets that can be exchanged, such as the Common Reporting Standards or the country-by-country data, modifications or adaptations may be required to make it fit for purpose for the information that's going to be exchanged under the GLOBE rules. Further testing will be required to evaluate the suitability of this or other systems. We also expect new tax software to be introduced into the market for multinational enterprises to comply with the GLOBE rules, although this software is unlikely to be global or standardised. Due to the role that financial statements and accounting concepts play in the GLOBE rules, we expect that those administering the rules will need to understand tax effect accounting. We're anticipating the need to either recruit or redeploy staff with those capabilities and experiences, in particular preparing statutory accounts in accordance with accounting standards. We're also developing tailored capability programs that can support existing staff develop the necessary expertise to undertake this work. We're expecting that Australian-based taxpayers and advisors will be also seeking to build their capability in this area. And thus, there will be a significant demand for these skills. Certainly a good time to be an expert in tax effect accounting. Whilst building capability internal will be an important focus, we're also considering how we can best support the Australian market in adapting to these new rules. This will include technical and practical administrative guidance to support taxpayers and advisors understand and comply with the new rules. This public guidance will be complemented by one-to-one guidance and support provided through direct engagement with taxpayers and advisors. Our existing processes to provide formal private binding advice to taxpayers will be available, and this will be supplemented through informal engagements and requests for generic advice provided by dedicated specialist teams in the ATO. Now, whilst our overall administrative approach will be guided by the OECD's implementation framework and the domestic legislation, we are consulting broadly to better understand the likely resourcing needs and develop a compliance program tailored to the Australian market. We will, of course, be looking to reduce the compliance burden wherever possible for in-scope taxpayers by leveraging off our existing compliance programs, integrating GLOBE reviews into existing processes, and coordinating information requests. As tax administrations, we all have a lot of work to do to prepare for GLOBE implementation. And that includes working together to share experiences on implementing and administering these changes. This is important because the OECD's work on basin erosion and profit shifting reflects a broader trend, an expectation that tax administrations will increasingly look beyond the border when it comes to delivering on the expectations from their governments and from their citizens. Whether it is implementing international integrity rules, like the hybrid mismatch rules and now the GLOBE rules, whether it's expanding treaty networks, as Australia is currently doing, or sharing knowledge or data between tax administrations, international linkages have never been more important in tax. As mentioned earlier, we've had some useful discussions with the DGT this year on the Convention on Mutual Administrative Assistance in Taxation Matters. A good example of the sort of tool that can support such global cooperation. This convention provides for all possible forms of administrative cooperation between the parties in the assessment and collection of taxes. For Australia, the convention complements our network of tax treaties and the information exchange agreements by providing an additional tool for detecting and preventing tax evasion, as well as, importantly, recovering outstanding tax debts that are offshore. We've done a lot of work to assess the benefits and understand the processes, assess the benefits and understand what the processes are as a signatory. I understand that Indonesia is currently considering removing the reservation in relation to the mutual assistance in tax collection element of the convention. Mutual assistance in collections can play an important role to maximise the benefits of such an instrument. Whilst many countries have signed up to the convention, not many have yet included provisions for the recovery of tax claims, which can put some limitations on how effective the instrument is. For example, as more countries explore options for bringing offshore businesses into the scope of their indirect tax systems, particularly with respect to low-value imported goods and digital services, mutual assistance in collection could become increasingly more relevant. As you're aware, Australia was one of the first countries to adopt a GST on low-value imported goods, and it is pleasing to see an increasing number of other countries adopting similar measures. I'm going to make a couple of brief remarks about that before I wrap up. Those particular measures, I think, are a good example of governments responding quickly to economic trends. In this case, a rapid rise in online purchases of goods and services from offshore businesses. In 2017 and 2018, laws were passed in Australia applying a GST vendor collection model to the sale of digital services and low-value goods, respectively. Under that model, offshore sellers of digital services or low-value goods are made responsible for collecting GST at the point of sale to Australian consumers. Now, the model provided a number of advantages over other tax administration methods, most notably by minimising administration costs and also maintaining the free flow of goods across our border. At the time the measures were developed, the key question was, would offshore businesses comply? When laws are introduced into the Australian Parliament, revenue estimates are prepared and attached to them. The revenue estimates for digital products and services estimated that 350 million Australian dollars would be raised in the first 2 years. The actual GST paid by businesses was more than double that, Australian 755 million. For low-value imported goods, revenue was estimated at Australian 300 million for the first 3 years, while actual GST paid in that period was 1.2 billion. Now, one of the reasons why the revenue from these measures exceeded our estimates was that compliance has been higher than predicted. Australia now has approximately 2,000 registered offshore businesses who are collecting, reporting and paying GST under this measure. An interesting feature of the regime is that revenue is highly concentrated in a small number of businesses. For example, 40% of the GST we collect under this regime is paid by the 10 largest digital platforms, that is, online marketplaces. More broadly, our 100 largest registrants pay 85% of the total revenue collected under these regimes. So these measures are another good example of how tax administrations are increasingly expected to look beyond the border to deliver on the expectations of government and citizens. In closing, I'd like to thank you all again for the opportunity to participate in this year's International Tax Conference. I'm very pleased to be able to say that throughout the COVID-19 pandemic, the ATO and the DGT were able to continue to work hard to maintain a close working relationship and to cooperate virtually. But this can't replace face-to-face communications. Just as a contemporary tax administration cannot exist in isolation from other jurisdictions, international tax cooperation requires deep and ongoing personal linkages to be effective. So it's been a pleasure to be here today, and I look forward to the rest of our conversation this afternoon. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Hector, for your excellent insight of Australia's perspective on international tax cooperation. If I may resume several points from your presentation. So the first one, you emphasize on the digital services. You mentioned the seamless, integrated, and automated services. You make an example for Arjuna and Srikandi, and also Alex in Australia, who is able to answer at least 94% accurate. So it's pretty impressive, Pak Hector. Yeah. And then the second one is the tax administration challenge faced by both DGT and the ATO. And you also mentioned our close relationship from a long time ago, and you also placed officer here from 2016, only in Paris and Jakarta. So, and then we also have a cooperation from in several aspects, such as working on the hybrid mismatch arrangement, and then mutual administration assessment assistance in tax matters, CRS, and automated EOI. And then you also mentioned on the late September, the FTA, Forum Tax Administration, held in Sydney, emphasized on the cooperation and coordination between tax authority to face the new challenges of the digitalization in economy. You also mentioned the structures of the GST in the Australian tax office. It's pretty interesting to see that 40% of the revenue come from only 10 taxpayers. So I think that's resume your presentation. Thank you, Pak Hector, for your nice presentation. Now, our not last but least speaker, Pak Mahfud. Silahkan, Pak Mahfud. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a big applause for Pak Mahfud. Before that, I will introduce Pak Mahfud Pak Mahfud has a very long CV actually. So, and also our very own Director General of Taxes in the 2000 and 2001 ya Pak Mahfud ya. So it's very honored to have you in here Pak Mahfud. Welcome home Pak. So first Pak Mahfud now is a taxation and fiscal policy expert in GIZ. His main duty is providing recommendation on domestic resource mobilization, fiscal and tax policy, subsidy, tax data, migration and tax compliance. During his long career, Pak Mahfud has a considerable position in government posts, of course in the Ministry of Finance, in DGT, the Ministry of State-Owned Enterprise, and then ADB, and then Australia-Indonesia Partnership and Translation. It's a very long CV, Pak Mahfud, and also involved in the amendment of law for Indonesian Regional Representative, DPD RI. Pak Mahfud holds his doctor in economics from the Gajah Mada University. So, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Pak Mahfud Sidik. Pak Mahfud, the floor is yours, Pak. Silakan, Pak.
Thank you for introduction, Ibu Matondang. Please, I would like to have slide number 1, but stay at the slide number 1. Dear distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, it is an honor for me and a great pleasure to participate this conference. I am very grateful to all of official and staff of DG of Taxes, especially Bapak Surya Utomo, Director General of Taxes, Ministry of Finance, and also we have Pak John Arsal and other official at the Ministry of Finance. I am very keen to participate in this conference with have already listened to distinguished speaker, Pak John Arsal and Pak Hector Thompson. I think we will focus on growing need to strengthen domestic resource mobilization and international tax cooperation in this regard. This issue is critical to ensure robust, sustainable, and inclusive development. Let me begin by raising an issue why that domestic resource mobilization emerged major strategic priority for our development member, especially developing countries. Firstly, over the last few years, tax evasion and tax avoidance across nation border have risen to one of the top global policy agenda. At a time of rising fiscal pressure and modest global growth and growing concern around the world at increasing inequality in income and wealth, it is not surprising that so many people are deeply frustrated by the ability of some taxpayers around the world to escape paying what is seen as their fair share of tax. Secondly, developing countries need reliable domestic revenue to protect themselves against external shock. The COVID-19 brought to light our vulnerability to the health and socio-economic threat from pandemic. Thirdly, government need to address structural challenge in public finance made evident by the generally low and volatile tax yield, especially in ASEAN countries, including Indonesia. The COVID-19 pandemic has exacerbated this challenge. Our developing member countries in Asia are facing an anticipated increase in public debt, as well as shrinking tax revenue, which have worsened their fiscal balance. Fourthly, in the aftermath of pandemic, government will need to mobilize more and more revenue to achieve their long-term development priorities. This revenue must increasingly come from domestic resource mobilization rather than reliance and on external financing that create unsustainable debt burden. More recently, the war between Russia and Ukraine is causing tremendous suffering, loss of life, population displacement, and destruction. It has also disrupted global economic conditions and undermined food and energy security. Among the many challenges this poses for policymakers, they now face even more difficulties, striking the delicate balance between supportive recovery and contained inflation. Many governments face challenges to strengthening domestic resource mobilization in order to meet these critical needs. They are also struggling to find the best timing and sequence to implement reform, especially in the area of taxation. Several advanced economy could still mobilize significant amount while limiting distortion and adverse effect on growth. Broadening the base, especially for example income tax, value-added tax, is very critical for the respective government, including Indonesia. So the question is how the country to rebuild fiscal space. Efforts should be made to step up the mobilization of domestic resources as well as undertake reform that will increase spending efficiency, including through the streamlining of subsidy. That is why let me discuss important to all of us. The key challenges are how can taxation best respond to mounting the spending need in developing countries and help bring down debt ratio in advanced economy, and how can equity concern to be balanced, especially in hard time, with efficiency that is needed to secure long-term growth. At the same time, the international community also need to prevent artificial shifting of business profit to low tax localization and tax efficient by high net worth individual, including in Indonesia. Indonesia is working closely together with OECD countries, World Bank, IMF, ADB, and other donors on this issue, what we call it BEPS project. Now let me deliver my presentation in brief, part of the BEPS project entitled Taxing the Digital Economy, addressing the challenge for a better tax administration and fair treatment for multinational enterprise. Please go to slide number 2. I think we all know that the spread of digital economy bring about many benefits. For example, in terms of growth, yes, employment, yes, well-being, and more generally. At the same time, it gives rise to number of challenges for policymakers, including tax authorities. Taxing the digital economy is very difficult to regulate. There are many types of digital business, and each specific case for many digital corporations in this regard. In general terms, in the area of direct taxation, the main policy challenges rise by digital economy fall into at least three broad categories: nexus, data, and characterization. Let's go to the next slide, slide number 3. In general terms, the area of direct taxation, the main policy challenges raised by digital economy, fall into three broad categories. Nexus, meaning that continual increase in potential digital technology, reduce the need in many cases for extensive physical presence. So, shifting from physical presence to significant presence. Number 2, data. The growth in sophisticated information technology has permitted companies in raise the issue of how to attribute value creation from the generation of data through digital product. Number 3, characterization. The development of new digital product or means of delivering service create uncertainty in relation to proper characterization of payment made in the context of new business model, particularly in relation to cloud computing. Slide number 4, please. In this regard, what in my mind, all countries, including Indonesia, should adjust its regulatory framework, whether law and government regulation, as well as Ministry of Finance decree and so forth. First, an important finding from many researchers is that problem of taxing highly digitized business is not due to their lack of taxable presence in many countries. It has often been said that the main problem digitization process is taxation in that company can operate in jurisdiction without a physical presence. Digital technology are radically altering business and operation model, resulting in round-the-clock and borderless value creation for business. The tax-specific technology make it possible to anywhere mandate of the global digital economy with changing tax data flows, data analytical, data requirement, and so forth. One of the tax that imposed by a certain country, what you call DST, Digital Service Tax, is introduced by France, Italy, Spain, and UK, applying a wider range of internet-based services. That is what pioneer of the DST. The current negotiation at OECD through the inclusive framework of PEPs now focusing on also digital taxation. So that's very important thing that I believe that Indonesia also very active to participate OECD meeting and so forth, including adopting the OECD commitment in this regard. The BEP action consists of 15 action plan in this regard: digital economy, hybrid mismatch arrangement, control foreign company rule, limit-based erosion via interest deduction. Action 5, countering harmful tax practices. Action number 6, prevent treaty abuse. Action number 7, preventing the artificial avoidance of permanent establishment status. Action number 8, transfer pricing of intangible asset. Action number 8 to 10, assuring that transfer pricing outcomes are in line with value creation. And number 11, establish methodology to collect and analyze data on BEPS. Action number 12, disclosing aggressive tax planning arrangement. Action number 13, re-examine transfer pricing document. Action number 14, making dispute resolution mechanism more effective. Action number 15, establishing a multilateral instrument. Please move slide number 5, please. So, in this regard, what Indonesia should take action in responding digital economy? I think government of Indonesia in this regard, DG of Taxes, already very active in responding this kind of new phenomenon of the digital economy. Indonesia has elaborate strategic framework for tax modernization. Presidential Decree number 40 issued in year 2018 indicate that Indonesia very active in responding digital economy, what so-called PMSE. That is very appreciated by other countries. Very rare in the world, countries that introducing the digital economy in the area of taxation, especially by contracting tax avoidance or maybe tax evasion by giant digital multinational corporation. I don't mention which company that very active in making tax avoidance or tax evasion. Of course, that is the challenge for the countries like Indonesia. Please move slide number 6. Digital permanent establishment measure that introducing amendment to domestic nexus to accommodate concept of permanent establishment is supposed to be modified by what so-called significant economic prison. That also recommended by OECD in the area of commitment between member of OECD, what so-called known as pillar number 1 and pillar number 2. That is very important. Indonesia is supposed to be very active in this regard. Reflection of pillar number 2, for example, and tax incentive. Let me turn now to one crucial area where government can work together to improve domestic resource mobilization, the implementation of rules and policies under pillar number 2. That is how the country making effective tax rate or ETR and minimum tax rate for corporation. In this regard, we know that is known by global anti-base erosion. That is also introduced by many countries that in the OECD. Coordination introduction of pillar number 2 could lessen the stress of government to attract foreign direct investment. Under pillar number 2, multinational enterprise will pay corporate tax at least at a great minimum tax rate, even if profit are subject to lower tax rate in the country. That is maybe it's supposed to be Indonesia should make negotiation between respective countries, including multinational corporation. Let's go number 7. That is my concluding remark in this regard. Indonesia's success post COVID-19 rebuilding fiscal buffer and enhancing resilience, and making the country very, very successful in managing public finance management. My concluding remarks, number 2, is digital economy remain a major challenge for tax authorities in emerging countries, including Indonesia. This is current international and unilateral effort to make collaboration between countries through multilateral commitment, including bilateral commitment that is supposed to be Indonesia should be active in this regard. Thirdly, technology merged with the economy, the rise of digital economy will create challenge for international taxation as well as domestic revenue mobilization now and in the future. As digital economy bring into new territory is fair taxation fiction or reality. So that is debate between countries that very, very keen to introduce the newly digital tax in this regard, but some other countries reluctant to implement this kind of policy. From perspective both government and multinational corporation, that is very important, especially for Indonesia, because we, Indonesia, still need investment, including foreign direct investment. How the country making good location to invest their capital. So that is balancing between making friendly in investment, but also they have to pay their tax obligation. Lastly, mobilizing of tax revenue, enforcing tax rule, mitigating climate change, and matter common concern is very, very critical for Indonesia, because Indonesia now is very active to join, to participate in international organizations like G20, ASEAN, and so forth. This is my concluding remark. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Pak Mahfud, for your excellent presentation. If I may summarize several points from your presentation. The first one, you mentioned the importance of the domestic resource mobilization. At least you mentioned the broadening of fiscal base and then the streamlining of subsidy. And the second one, there's you characterize the characterization of direct taxation of digital economy. Typically, you classify it into 3 classes. The first is nexus, second is data, and then the last one is characterization. And you also mentioned the need for the tax authority to adjust the regulation in adjusting the development in the digitalization of economy. At least you mentioned there are 5 reasons to do so. And then you also mentioned how Indonesia adapt to the digitalization economy by implementing the tax policy on this issue. You also mentioned the significant economic presence and the permanent establishment issues, and you conclude by mentioning there is a need to be resilient to all tax authority in the public management in handling these issues, and then digital economy is still a challenge in the near future for the country, especially for the developing country, and then for that we need the multilateral cooperation to accommodate the issues. So, ladies and gentlemen, please once again I ask you to give big applause for our 3 presenters here. So, Pak Yon, Pak Hector, and Pak Mahfud. So we now come for the Q&A session. The Q&A session will be divided by 2 sessions. The first session, I will ask one of you one question, and then the last one, I will not be delaying anymore after the speaker answer my question. I will leave the speaker to the audience. So the first, I will start with Pak Yon. Pak Yon, in your presentation, you mentioned there are 5 pillars in the DGT reform. According to you, Pak Yon, out of those 5, which pillar is the most challenging in the process? Why do you think so? And then what measures does the DGT take to overcome the challenges? Thank you, Pak Yon.
Thank you very much, Elsa, for the very difficult question, actually. Practically, actually, in my opinion, that out of 5 baseline of reform, I think all of them has their own characteristic, uniqueness, and also challenging. So I think, in my opinion, there's no such kind of the most important one and the least important one. All of them are very important. So sometimes we usually take an analogy of doing kind of this current reform in our systems. If we say that the core tax system, while it means that changing or improving the business process and IT, what we call the core tax system, a kind of changing the old car into the new car, it means that we need also the driver, the one, right? Okay. In order to drive it very smoothly, we need also the capability. So it means that we need to change the organization as well as the people that will be driving the organization later on, and the one who will run the business process, and the one who read the data and analytics using this kind of the new data analytics that provided by the new systems. And at the same time, probably we need to also to introduce the new rules, because the new car probably they need some new rules, and they need also some challenges on that. You know that because a very fast car, they need the new rules on how to drive carefully while doing while also exposing the very, how to say, the optimum level of the car itself. So we did the new rule of that. So I mean, again, I can say that every part of the reform process is very unique, and they have their own challenges. However, many of them are actually within our responsibility, but some of them are related to the external one. For example, when we talk about the core tax system itself, it's related to the budget, it's related to the procurement process, which is a very complex one, of course, a very complex one. Changing the 21 business process from what we have now into the new one is very challenging one. Of course, right? We need the data, we need the system itself. But at the same point also, some of them are really actually under our capacity. Like in a regulation, for example, some of them under our capacity and our authority to change. Whenever we need, it is necessary to improve the capacity, domestic resource mobilization, for example, in the future. So again, to answer the question, Elsa, there is nothing, what we call the most important one, there's the least important one. We'll do it comprehensively all together. So the question now is, how can we coordinate each other to make sure that the regulation that be designed will be in line with the process that has been designed by the people, then also in line with the new, the to-be organization, as well as it should be in line also with the current business, the new, or the to-be business process. So this is very important one. So that's why under the Director General Assistance order, we have designed 3 task force to do that. The first one is responsible for designing the new organization, or the organization to be, and also related to how we manage the human resource. And the second task force is responsible for dealing with the core tax itself, and also business process, human business process. And the last task force, actually under my responsibility, is dealing with the policy and regulation that need to be in place also to support the core tax, as well as to design some new policy that will that should be in place in order to adapt to the new challenges by the global, for example, global pressure, for example, the implementation of the Pillar 1 and Pillar 2, but at the same time, we will also have to think the new domestic regulation that might be necessary in place in order to optimize our domestic revenue mobilization. The regulation that probably they change how we treat the small and medium enterprises, for example. and how we are doing the withholding taxes. Like the previous one, we introduced really how we do we did introducing the taxation on the crypto, taxation on financial technology. That's kind of the job that should be parallel done. So I think, again, it's a very important job for all of them. And what the key point is that how these 3 task force and the 5 business process should be in line all together in order to achieve the optimum or the optimum goal objective of the Directorate General of Taxes. Thanks, Elsa.
Thank you, Pak Yon, for your clear explanation. So it has to be simultaneously done, ya, Pak, ya. So it's a big challenge for DGT, Pak, ya. Okay, thank you, Pak. And now to Pak Hector. Pak Hector, you mentioned in your speech that ATO this year hosted the Forum of Tax Administration plenary in Sydney. What role do you think forums like FTA plenary have in bringing administration together to work through issues like pilot to implementation? And then would you encourage Indonesia to host such an event? Please, Pak.
Thank you very much for the question. So yeah, the Australian Taxation Office did host the Forum of Tax Administration plenary. It's an OECD forum in Sydney earlier this year. It was a lot of hard work, but by all reports, it was a well-received event. I think first and foremost, it's important to say that when revenue authorities, tax administrations get together, it's important to remember that our job is to collect revenue. And so I think a good question about a forum like that is, well, how does it assist in helping tax authorities collect revenue? A good example of something we've developed under the Forum of Tax Administration is something called the JITSIC network, and that includes something called a single point of contact, or a SPOC. And it sounds like a small thing, but it's actually really important. If you think about tax administrations, they're big, complicated organisations with lots of people in them, and they structure themselves differently in a range of ways. So if you have a particular issue that you would like some information on, or to better understand, or taxpayer-specific questions, it can be hard to navigate those organisations. So something as simple as providing a single point of contact in a tax administration to enable the questions to be farmed out and managed sensibly is actually a really, really important thing. The second thing I would say is that those relationships really matter. I mean, you can contact another agency cold with an email or a call, but actually knowing your counterpart in another organisation, having established a relationship with them, is really key to getting a good outcome on those sorts of exchanges of information. So I think that's the first thing to say, is that events like that or groupings like that are really just important in terms of setting up the preconditions for us to be able to do what I called earlier the beyond the border work, the work that tax administrations are asked to do when there are links into other countries and jurisdictions. The second thing I would say is that tax administrations, while they might structure themselves differently and operate in slightly different contexts, they have a common mission to raise revenue. And so we can really learn from one another. And so we tried to use the forum earlier in the year in a few ways. So for example, we had an emerging leaders strand of the event, where we got tax commissioners, director generals, to nominate an emerging leader in their organisation and bring them to the event, so that they had exposure to some of the issues that their commissioners and director generals spoke about. We also invited business to attend, so we had a number of sessions that were open to business. We had some panels with journalists, business people, academics, and really tried to not just think about things from a tax administration's perspective, but also from the perspective of taxpayers and those in the broader community. So I think those were some of the things that really stood out to me as the value add of those forums. I should say, there are a range of forums, so I also had the pleasure to attend SCATA earlier this year. So there are some regional forums as well, but certainly the Forum of Tax Administration is the largest global gathering of tax administrators. So thanks. Hope that answers the question.
You have answered the question, and then you mentioned that cooperation between tax authority which have the same common goal to collect revenue and communication between the tax revenue and also the taxpayer. Thank you, Hector. And then Pak Mahfud, well, your presentation is all about digital technology. So, Pak Mahfud, digital technology are radically altering business and operating models. So, in your perspective, Pak, how do you think that tax authority worldwide should respond regarding the rapid development of digital economy without distorting the investment, especially in the developing country like Indonesia? Thank you, Pak.
Yeah, thank you. It is very difficult, the tax authority, to manage the process, whether it's supposed to be short-term, perspective, medium, and long-term. That is supposed to be the country should make a clear decision in this regard, and also considering interagency collaboration between, for example, DG of Taxes, in this case Ministry of Finance, and respective technical ministries, including the agenda of, say, business environment. So that is, we have to be very, very comprehensive in making the policy matters. Yeah, for example, taxation in some extent is downstream rather than upstream. So the policy is supposed to be in the area of macroeconomic, macro concern, rather than only getting revenue mobilization, especially in the short term. So that is very important thing. Time frame is very important. We, Indonesia, compete with other countries, such as in the ASEAN countries. If I can make an example, why the Vietnam in the past, in the 20 years, in the past 20 years, 25 years, Vietnam is considered lag behind Indonesia. But currently, now, Vietnam is the country that considered number 10 in making export to the United States. Meaning that this country able to make competition between very, very strong countries like OECD countries and so forth. In the area of taxation, of course, we have to sacrifice, but in the short term, not in the long term. So how to make collaborative and comprehensive decision in this regard? So I think we, Indonesia, very, very need to have investment, including foreign direct investment. If I can say that about 25 to 30% of the total GDP is supposed to come from investment. The number one is consumption, about 55%. Meaning that we still need investment. We need make investment very, very attractive, including maybe the country is supposed to be sacrifice the tax revenue in the short term. But in the longer term, we can get benefit from, for example, employment, from also revenue from taxation and so forth, including digital multinational corporation. Yeah, we have not to be suspicion to this kind of business. We have to treat them as a good taxpayer, good investor, and so forth. So that is supposed to be making comprehensive policy in this regard. Do not only focusing on revenue mobilization. That is my point of view.
it involves both short-term and long-term. Yeah, in the short term we have to sacrifice, but maybe in the long term we can gain some revenue. So thank you, Pak Mahfud. Ladies and gentlemen, now I would like to invite you to share your curiosities and ask questions directly to the panelists in here by mentioning your name, affiliation, and direct the question to each of the panelists here. So, is there any question from the floor? Yeah. So I take the first 3 questions. 4. Okay. I take the first 4 questions. Okay. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Bu Elsa, Pak Yon, Pak Hector, and Pak Mahfud. My name is Igede Adunantanaga. I'm from State Finance Polytechnic, Pakistan. I want to ask question to Pak Yon, if I may. I'm really curious about the Indonesian plan for 2023 and 2024, because in 2 years, Indonesia will enter a new era of government. One thing is that I'm really curious is about how we brace for impact for the economic global condition, which is from the moderation of the price, the CPO, the goods, and also before this session, I read some news that Indonesia have survived the inflation mostly because of the small and medium enterprise, UMKM. Because most UMKM grows when the inflation starts. And my question is, are we seeing a new tax law being passed in the future, or are we seeing a new coordination with remembering our good relationship with neighbors countries like Australia or Malaysia to countermeasure the effects of the future years incoming? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And then the next question, please.
Selamat sore. Pertanyaan saya, kan relasi penerimaan pajak sudah optimal bahkan melebihi target. Mengapa dirasa belum mampu menopang laju pertumbuhan perekonomian di Indonesia? Ditambah lagi kita akan menghadapi isu resesi ekonomi di tahun 2023. Bagaimana peran pajak dalam hal tersebut? Terima kasih.
Dari siapa ya Mas? Namanya dari mana, ditujukan ke siapa?
Perkenalkan, nama saya Lutfiansa dari kampus Institut Ciami. Pertanyaan
dari mana tadi afiliasinya Mas?
Institut Ciami.
Oh iya, ya. Ditujukan ke siapa Mas?
Pak Mahmud.
Oh Pak Mahfud, oke ya. Yeah, please.
I'm going to guess that that wasn't a question for me, because if it was, I don't speak Bahasa.
Oh, sorry. So, sorry, Pak Hector. So, his question was regarding the how Indonesia will survive the inflation. Yeah, I think it's about that. Okay. So it's addressed to Pak Mahfud. Yeah. And then next question, please.
Check. Thank you, Bu Elsa. Good afternoon, Mr. and all of you guys. let me introduce myself first. My name is Muhammad Insani. I'm from PK Instan. Thank you, Mr. Yon Arsal, Mr. Hector, dan Mr. Mahfud for your explanation before. It's so amazing for me. I want to ask something for Mr. Mahfud. Mr. As a student, as a student, I have my dream I want to be agent of change, Mr. So, my question is, what can I do, or maybe like start from like little things that I can do to support or participate for making the national economic growth, include digital economic, keep going to grow and sustainable. I'm sorry if there is any mistake from my question, or maybe it is too simple. Thank you, Mr.
Be sorry, Mas. It's a very interesting question. So I would like to take one more question, I think, from the left side here.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Pak Yon, Pak Mahfud, Mr. Hector, and Kak Elsa. I have one question for Mr. Hector. I think one of the famous cases in international taxation this year is about Rio Tinto in Australia. I think it's a big result for ATO. And would you like to share to us about the key elements of the success of the process in negotiation with Singapore or with company itself, or maybe other things that important in the process of the resolve this issue? Thank you.
So he Hector wants to have a clarification. You asking about the Rio Tinto? The Rio Tinto story from the ATO point of view. Okay, so is it okay for you to answer that? Okay. Then now we have Pak Yon to answer the questions, and then Pak Mahfud, and then Pak Hector. Okay, floor is yours, Pak Yon.
So thank you very much, Mas Yudi from STAN. Yudi tadi ya. Okay, and then also I think it's also related to our colleague's question from Stiami. Actually, a kind of the question, if I may repeat, actually how we are, in the next year to come, it's not really easy year for us, 2023, 2024. Even the president said it must be a very tough year for us because many countries are now preparing for the worst actually because of recessions ahead and everything. So the question is how we should be ready for that. Actually, fortunately for Indonesia, like I mentioned in my earlier presentation, we have a very good signs of surviving so far. At least from the signal of the macroeconomics perspective, we still have very stable, even though it's not really high, but a stable growth rate. We can maintain the stable, relatively low inflation rate. And actually, the interest rate is not so high. And also the exchange rate is not, even though it's volatile, but still quite okay. And even though currently we see that there are some outflow of the fund from the country, but still some money inflow. It means what I wanted to say is that we have at least a very good baseline for us to be ready for 2023 and 2024. It seems that if we take a look at on the perspective of the tax revenue side, which is revenue is always at the beginning and become the signal of whether the economy is still healthy or not. Like I mentioned before, that we see in the statistic that the revenue this year is very considerably high. If we take probably the outlook might be the growth rate probably more than 25% than what we achieved last year. And then the result itself is showing that the Indonesian revenue in terms of the DGT's perspective is already achieved more than what we achieved before the pandemic levels. If we take a look at another countries, and then many other countries are still now below the pre-pandemic level, which is year 2019. Again, it is a very important baseline for Indonesia to go continue to the future. For the Minister of Finance and especially DGT perspective, what we are going to do is that, again, domestic revenue mobilization is a very important one. How we can optimize all that we have, including all the regulation, all the administration. It means, simply put, it says we should continue and improve the quality of the reform that has been going on now. It is a must. And the second one is that, like Pak Mahfud mentioned before, it's not necessarily only to collect revenue, but in sometimes, like what we experienced during the pandemic 2020 and 2021, 2022, DGT's Minister of Finance not really necessarily being given the job to collect revenue, which is the main job, of course. But at the same time, DGT has also has to play also a role in supporting the economy, inducing the growth and something like that. It is very interesting to see like the video that in place before we start the program, how DGT introduced the program of BDS, for example, Business Development Services, in which the DGT support the small and medium enterprises, not necessarily giving them doing some education, socialization, say that this kind of the tax should be imposed to you, something like that. No more. But we approach the small and medium enterprises by giving them the capacity to access the financial market, to give them the bankability, to direct them for any relationship with other party that might help them to grow. Like for example, we conduct a seminar where we invite the small and medium enterprises. At the same time, we invite also the people, resource person from a digital platform, for example, that teach the small and medium enterprises how to grow with them, and then how to enter the the digital market, for example, something like that. So by giving them opportunity to grow, then at the end, of course, when they get some benefit later on, they will pay tax. So again, by going back to the questions, again, at least the baseline now is be ready. Of course, 2023, 2024 will be will be tough year compared to the last one. But again, there are so many things that should be done. Any reform, structural reform, and also in many reform in many other ministries, related ministries also should be continued. Like in our policy in order to, like say, in the futures, we have to go on to the green technology, for example. Then we should go there. For example, we introduced already in our law, we introduced the carbon tax, but it's not really it's necessary but not sufficient. In order to introduce to induce people to buy or not to buy to go to the green car, for example, then we provide the incentive, less tax for the electric car, for example. No PPNBM itu luxury tax for the electricity car, kind of things. So in order to do that, in order to compete in the futures, also we have to, again, creating the good roadmap for the industry, for the human resource, even in the state, in the national level, and also for the DGT level. I guess based on the kind of the baseline, I think we still have hope that we can pass this kind of the tough, challenging time for 2022 and 2023, 23 and 24. Thanks, Elsa. I hope it's answered the question from Yudi.
Gimana Bli? Okay, is that okay? The answers? Okay. And then we move to Pak Mahfud, Pak, for the next question.
What is the first question from?
The first question
our
is,
colleague from Stiami.
The Stiami is handling how Indonesia handling the inflation, the potential for inflation, Pak. Inflation, Pak.
Oh, inflation.
Inflation. Pak.
Oh,
yeah. And then the last one also from Stan, how that he wants to be a change of agent of change.
Okay.
So how he can contribute to Indonesian economy. That's
okay. This is relatively that is not in the area of taxation, but macroeconomic policy, with regard to inflation. In my mind, the country like Indonesia proved to the society that during past 15 years at least, 20 years at least, be able to manage appropriate inflation in this regard, range from 3 to 4 point something %. This is relatively not too high, because if, for example, the inflation rate in the country too high, and then the uncertainty of business environment to make to decide their price and also buying the input and so forth, they are very difficult to make justification and decision making, especially when the input come from the imported commodity, imported goods. That is, inflation is supposed to be relatively acceptable. In my mind, inflation rate in Indonesia, at least until the year 2019, is somewhat okay. But beginning year 2020, this is anomaly. So we cannot justify only 1 year. And then the next, after 2020, year 2021 and 2022 is somewhat normal again. So no, that is my answer to our colleague from Setiami, and also from our colleague from Stan, degree of competitiveness of our citizen. This is very important. We in Indonesia, we are facing with the problem of variation of our society, from Aceh until to Papua. That is, if we calculate using, for example, what's called IPM. So, for example, Java Island, somewhat 78, and for example, Papua, only 26 in a certain region and so forth. So the degree of equality is very important. So that is very important. The government interfere this kind of unfortunate region or unfortunate citizen in the circuit. How to make it happen? Of course, through what's called structural reform and also financial reform, including tax reform. That is composite policy is supposed to be made by the government. Of course, it cannot be happen in a short term. Basically, people are facing with very, very instant outcome, output and so forth. So it's supposed to be need at least in the middle range, in medium term, even in the long term. That is my point of view. Thank you.
Thank you, Pak Mahfud, for your question. I hope your the answers satisfy your question, our fellow from Stan. And also the last one is to Pak Hector. Silakan Pak Hector.
Thank you. So look, I think it's an interesting question, and it is around some of the large announcements in the Australian context around particular cases. The first thing I would say is that the announcements themselves are interesting, and we see them as a really important aspect of transparency to the taxpayers and the community more general, which is why you see the announcements. The announcements, of course, don't tell you much about the health of your overall tax system. So one thing that we have invested in the last 5 to 10 years is something called a tax gap, because in fact, even in our large multinational market, most taxpayers comply, and most taxpayers get their tax right on lodgement. So I think the latest numbers we have are something like 92% of taxpayers in that market get it right on lodgement, and after compliance activity that goes up to 96%. our aspiration in the long run is to get 96 at lodgement and 98%. But I think it's really important to say that, just to frame the issue, that most taxpayers do the right thing, get it right on lodgement. We are, in a sense, in Australia, corporate tax is very much in the public mind. It's a big priority for many Australian citizens that multinationals and corporates pay the right amount of tax. And so over a number of years now, the Australian government has resourced the Australian Taxation Office in order to enable them to invest significant time and effort where we think a taxpayer might not have returned the correct amount at lodgement. And look, there's a whole range of investments, techniques, from data and analytics, to detect arrangements of concern, all the way through how we do our transfer pricing analysis to how we engage with the corporates in question. But all of that is something that takes a lot of time and takes a lot of effort. And the bottom line is that the Tax Avoidance Task Force, which is the investment that I'm alluding to, has enabled the ATO to put the ATO in a position to be able to do those sorts of things in those sorts of cases. The final thing I would say is we think about our interactions with taxpayers on a client basis. So we structure ourselves. We've got large business, we've got small business, we've got private wealth, we've got individuals. And one thing we do think about that public and multinational client segment is it's really important to get voluntary compliance from other client segments, that they see that that particular market is doing the right thing. And they should be doing the right thing because, of course, they're very well resourced in terms of advisors and expertise to be able to comply with those tax laws.
Thank you, Pak Hector, for your answer. And then we will take at least one or two questions from our online participants. Is there any question from our online participants? I see one raised hand, at least. Yeah, you may take your question directly to which speaker and then mention your name and affiliation.
Hi, can you hear me? My name is Caroline Aman. I'm from the Australian Tax Office.
Still mute, I think, or
It's unmute.
Hello?
From.
I cannot hear your voice. Unmute, please.
You still can't hear me? That's all right, then. Maybe I'll... Oh, thank you. So my name is Caroline Aman. I'm from the Australian Tax Office. But Hector mentioned earlier that the globe rules are quite complex. It's different to existing tax regime, and they'll focus on accounting standards and tax effect accounting. Further, at the OECD level, many of the guidance are still being worked on. Can Pak Ian share what practical issues DGR may face in managing its internal capability building in relation to Pillar 2 locals? And can Pak Hector share how Australia may assist in such capability building?
Thanks, Caroline, for the questions. Very interesting question, I guess, and also the very important one. I'd say, like, so if I understand then the question, how can we DGT be ready for the quite challenges in the current issue of the international taxation that are very complex. And I guess there are three ways that are currently been doing. The first one is, of course, we are designing for example, implementing the Pillar 1 and Pillar 2, we need the quite appropriate also domestic regulation in place. So in our current tax harmonization law, we have put in some of the regulation in the domestic law in order for us, the DGT, to be able to implement once the Pillar 2 and the Pillar 1 has been agreed, for example. So I think that the first one that we need to do is to have the regulation in place. The second one, in order to do the regulation very well, we need to increase our staff capability to do the current scheme of the international standard. It's very challenging, of course, and I guess we have done it quite a long time. We have done many trainings, and then like you said before, Karen, that even in international OECD discussion lately, we still have they are still discussing on the area of let's say how to make the guidelines and on the implementation of the Pillar 1 and Pillar 2, for example. And I think my colleague from the Directorate of International Taxation has been quite active in during the discussion as well. So the proposal is not necessarily to attend the meeting, of course, but also to share some our thought and knowledge on experience, especially from the developing countries' perspective in that kind of the big discussion. So hopefully we can learn from the others, and also by actively involved in doing kind of the job of designing the guidelines, putting some many comments on that is also very important for us to develop the internal capability. This is a very important one. And in addition to the regulation and human resource, currently we also have been doing the kind what we call a task force, yeah, Elsa, yeah. I think the task force itself, in order to standardize the procedures in dealing with the taxpayers, especially when we are facing the international taxation issues. The task force itself is quite successful, I guess, in order to spread out the knowledge and capacity of dealing with the transfer pricing issues in many regional offices. Like we know that Indonesia is very big. We have 34 regional offices, and previously the case of transfer pricing and international taxation has been mainly done by the large taxpayer office, regional office, and also the special regional offices. But now, by doing the task force, we have spread out the knowledge and capacity to all of the staff in 34 regional offices. Now we can see even the small KPP in small tax office also done some kind of job of transfer pricing. Like, you know, it's kind of the challenging in the future, and we must be ready for that. But again, there is one more important thing related to Pak Mahfud mentioned before that are very important also for Indonesian case, and I think for many developing countries in the world. Currently, we are still using the tax holiday, tax allowance as one of our instruments to attract the investment. We know that soon we will implementation the Pillar 2 will coming soon, and then the global minimum tax 15% will be in place. Now, last month I attended the conference in Tokyo, and many people talk about how they be ready, what should be the developing countries do in order to still to be able to attract the investment. But given the current condition, probably the tax holiday and tax allowance and many kind of the approach might not be really effective anymore under the global consensus, under the Pillar 2 implementation. So kind of this one is very tough for us, also challenging. So in terms of the policy, we need probably, that's why probably we did some assistance also. I guess many developing countries need kind of the assistance and also discussion, not necessarily only assistance, but we need to discuss with many other countries in the world, especially also with the ATO, with our you have a representative in Indonesia. We need to share the experience and discussion. What should be Indonesia do once the Pillar 2, for example, has been implemented? What would happen to the the current regime of tax incentive and tax allowance. There are plenty of the companies that are now enjoying the tax holiday scheme currently. And then once the Pillar 2 implemented, then the benefit of joining the tax holiday will not longer be there. At least now we give them the 100% discount of the tax rate. But now at least there will be some top up 15% in another country in their home countries. Kind of the things we have done research internally, especially for what would be the impact of the tax holiday, tax allowance, and tax deduction, and super tax deduction, and many other incentives that will be given to the taxpayers, and what would the impact once the Pillar 2 has been implemented. But now, I think there's no countries in the world that come to the exact conclusion, and at this point, Caroline, I think with Pak Hector here, and also I get Pak Glenn here, I guess we can have some more discussion on that issues, and because soon we will be implemented, probably next year, I guess, 2023 or maximum 2024. So we will still have some 1 year to discuss with other countries, to learn from their perspective on how to deal with this problem in the future. So this is my response to your question, Caroline. Thank you.
There we go. So I might just add to those comments, which I think were excellent comments. I've just come from a regional consultation the OECD held in Manila, and I was struck by that very point that, particularly with Pillar 2, from the perspective of an economy that offers a lot of tax holidays or concessions, there's a lot of things to work through and a lot of things to think about. And I was struck by, the pillars are complicated. They're both complicated. Pillar 2, though, has an implementation time frame running slightly ahead of Pillar 1, so I think it makes sense to focus on the implementation challenges associated with Pillar 2. And there are features of Pillar 2 that are probably more important than other features for some countries. And so what I was struck by at the consultation was the qualifying domestic minimum tax element of Pillar 2. And so that's something I think is worth thinking about in quite some detail. In terms of the specific question, I think for me about capacity building, well, certainly at the ATO, we'll do our best to share experiences and knowledge. I would make the point that the pillars are quite a significant departure from some of the standard ways that we do things. So often, if we're asked to provide some advice and support, it will be with respect to something we've been doing for 5 or 10 years. We're in exactly the same position as every other country. We're starting from scratch. This will be a new system for us. It will build on features of the existing system, whether it be exchange of information, whether it be transfer pricing expertise. So it's not starting from scratch. But in terms of building the systems, we'll be building them at the same time as other countries are doing. And so I think that just emphasises the importance of learning from each other, that dialogue. And I was talking to Pak Grant before the session, and I do understand we've put some funds aside in our budget to work on that next year. But I also, emphasise that point about it, working with the OECD, working with the IMF, the World Bank, the Asian Development Bank, your regional tax authorities, because there is an awful lot to do, and it is certainly not a straightforward task.
I think in short, the common challenges faced by all the tax authority will call for mutual cooperation among them. Yeah, and then I will call for one question from the floor. One final question. Is there any question from the audience? Yeah, I see one raised hand. Please.
Okay, thank you Bu Elsa, Pak Yon, Pak Thompson dan Pak Mahmud. Perkenalkan, saya Meni Susanti. I am one of reviewers of Santek and taxation lecturer and tax consultant. I would like to ask to Mr. Thompson, could you share please how Australia Tax Office in raising and maintain tax ratio year to year? Yeah, maybe it's a simple question. And to Pak Mahmud, I would like to how your opinion about the Caldor research. Caldor state that the developing country cannot exceed their state of underdevelopment unless they are able to raise 15% and above of their GDP as a tax revenue. Could you give your opinion about this, Pak Siddiq? Thank you. Terima kasih, Bu Elsa.
Yeah, thank you, Bu Melia. About tax ratio, I suppose. Tax ratio, yeah, Bu Melia. Yeah, how the ATO deals to improve the tax ratio in the Australia.
Okay, so I think I would start by saying that the ratio of tax to GDP. So since I've been in Indonesia, I've noticed a discussion about the tax ratio to GDP. In Australia, because it's sort of relatively a mature economy, the tax ratio to GDP largely moves about not for reasons of ATO policy or tax collection efforts, but because of macroeconomic events. So just to give you a straightforward example, during COVID-19, the government provided significant stimulus measures, and obviously that put a lot of money in people's pockets, and so oddly enough, we collected a lot more tax because those payments were taxable. So we don't focus on the level of tax to GDP as a tax administrator. What we do focus on is that sort of concept of tax gap, which I was talking about before. We really focus on trying to get voluntary compliance at the highest level possible. And what we always say is that a dollar lodged on assessment is a much better outcome for us than a dollar that we have to then chase through engagement or assurance activity. So we do focus very clearly on trying to get that tax gap on lodgement as high as possible.
Thank you, Pak Hector. And Bu Meli, would you please repeat your second question to Pak Mahfud, please?
Okay. This. Okay. I have ever read the Caldor research state that developing country cannot exceed their state of underdevelopment unless they are able to raise 50% and above of their GDP as tax revenue. How your opinion, Mr. Mahmud? Thank you.
Let me tell you, yeah, okay, in many analyses made by academics and also by a government itself, the government of Indonesia in this regard, DG of Taxes and Excise, from time to time has not been achieved or its potential in collecting the money in the form of tax ratio, whether national or subnational combined or only national tax and excise. My point of view is that we have to also taking into consideration the spending, yeah, the spending. If the country need more and more spending to fulfill the demand for public goods and so forth, it's supposed to be they have more and more tax collection. If not, and then filling the gap is supposed to be from what so-called financing. Ideally, it's supposed to be tax ratio is supposed to increase. That is why the government of Indonesia, in this case, DG of taxes and so forth, from time to time, making a better policy in the area of taxation, better tax administration, and so forth. Comparing to other countries, especially the OECD countries, of course, Indonesia is less behind in this regard. But in my point of view, we have to compare from time to time also the reputation of Indonesia itself. Say, for example, how many percentage tax collection to GDP? If the ratio become better, the ratio become elastic, non-elastic, meaning that the total tax collection higher than GDP growth plus inflation plus population growth, meaning that there is an effort, extra effort of the DG of taxes. Of course, we have to push the government in collecting the money from taxation, but again, be careful on this regard, especially after the COVID-19, because some businesses has not been in position of recovery. They still need tax incentive and so forth. But the businesses is supposed to be imposed normally. That is a strategy of the DG of taxes and the government in order to make collecting money with minimizing of distortion. That is very important thing. Thank you.
Pak Mahfud, and I think it will conclude our discussion. I still see many hands hanging in the air, but unfortunately we have a time limitation for this. So thank you, Pak Yon, Pak Hector, and Pak Mahfud for this fruitful discussion. And also I thank you for all the audience who asked the questions. And then as a conclusion, before we end our today's session, I would like to conclude our discussion by stating that after listening to many perspectives from all the speakers here, I believe that all tax authorities, including DGT, face the common challenges in dealing with the digitalization of the economy. Effort has been taken involving global discussion and enhancing cooperation among tax authorities. I believe that today's discussion will enlighten us in how DGT and other tax authorities from our neighboring country, ATO in here, maintaining the direction towards a fairer, equal and certain taxation system to accommodate the improvement, the development in the digitalization of taxation. So once again, thank you very much and have a great time for the rest of the day. And let me close by pantun sedikit, kepiting kenari dari Balikpapan. Kita jumpa lagi kapan-kapan. So I give the floor to the MC. Back to Rima and Reza.
Thank you all panelists and moderator for the fruitful discussions today. And please, panelists and also moderators stay on the stage. Now we have the pleasure of inviting Bapak Nel Maldrinur as the Director of the Tax Discrimination Service and Public Relations to give away the appreciation plaques to all panelists and moderator. Give applause to all of us. Once again, we would like to say thanks for all panelists and also moderator for fruitful discussions in these sessions. And after this,
all panelists, moderator, and Bapak Neil, please remain on the stage. And we want to next session, we would like to invite representative from ATO and GIZ, and also representative from Ministry of Home Affairs Republic of Indonesia, Ministry of Defense Republic of Indonesia, National Research and Innovation Agency Republic of Indonesia to go to the stage to have a photo session together.
again, thank you for all the panelists, moderator, Bapak Neil, and all the representatives. You may have a seat. Again, thank you. It's such an honor for us to have fruitful discussions in these occasions fully. So before we are going to the awarding sessions,
yes, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, as what we informed before, at the end of the International Tax Conference today, we will announce the winner of taxation call for paper. But before going to the awarding session of the winner of taxation call for paper today, we proudly present a delightful singing performance by the DGT employees.
yes, absolutely. We still have one performance, from the DGT employees before we hear the announcement, of the 4 best paper as the winner of the taxation call for paper 20 and 22. And this performance is singing a song, Indonesian song, and this song tells us about the story, someone that we love like a symphony, which means that the one give us the spirit to be happier and have a life better than before. So absolutely, the song is very familiar for us. All audience may sing together.
Yes.
And this is performed by the DGT employees. Well, for the authors, absolutely, don't be nervous because after the performances, there will be announcement sessions that we all will know who is the winner of the taxation call for paper. And the total paper submitted is coming from various background, not only from the DGT, from the Ministry of Finance, but also the other institutions that join the taxation call for paper.
All right, Rima, maybe we can see together the singing performance by DGT performance, and all audience, please welcome Rasa Voice Simfoni yang Indah.
Iya, nanti dinyalain dari sana.
Alun sebuah simfoni, kata hati disadari, merasuk sukma kalbuku. Dalam hati ada satu, manis lembut bisikanmu, lirih suaramu, bagai pelita hidupku.
Berkilauan bintang malam, semilir angin pun sejuk, seakan hidup mendatang, dapat ku tempuh denganmu. Berpadunya dua insan, simfoni dan keindahan, melahirkan kedamaian, melahirkan kedamaian.
Syair dan melodi, kau bagai aroma penghapus pilu, gelora di hati, bak mentari kau sejukkan hatiku.
Burung-burung pun bernyanyi, bunga pun tersenyum,
melihat kau hibur hatiku.
hatiku mekar kembali, terhibur simfoni,
pasti hidupku kan bahagia.
Syair dan melodi, kau bagai aroma penghapus pilu,
gelora di hati,
bak mentari kau sejukkan hatiku. Burung-burung pun bernyanyi, bunga pun tersenyum,
melihat kau hibur hatiku.
hatiku mekar kembali, terhibur simfoni,
pasti hidupku kan bahagia.
Burung-burung
tersenyum melihat kau hibur hatiku. Hatiku kembali terhibur simfoni, pasti hidupku kan bahagia.
Pasti hidupku kan bahagia.
Well, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, the next agenda, which is awaited by all participants of the taxation call for paper 20 and 22, is the announcement of the winner.
And who will be the winners? Ladies and gentlemen, after going through a long series of reviews, ending with an assessment by judges, and the 4 best papers were chosen. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, he is the winner of the taxation call for paper 20 and 22.
Taxation call for paper 2022. Review of the employee performance evaluation system at the Directorate General of Taxes, its effectiveness and employee satisfaction level. Ani Said Basalama and Heru Widyat Manti. The third winner of taxation call for paper 2022. Koreksi kebijakan harga transport domestik, sebuah zero sum game penerimaan pajak nasional. Studi kasus KPP Pratama di wilayah DKI Jakarta. Fajar Surya Putra and Yeni Farida. The second winner of taxation call for paper 2022. Does government effectiveness moderate the relationship between regulatory quality and tax complexity? A tale of 100 nations. Muhammad Dahlan. The first winner of taxation call for paper 2022. Predicting firms' tax-paying behavior using artificial neural networks. The case of Indonesia. Arifin Rosid.
Congratulations to all the winners of taxation call for paper 20 and 22. And we would like to invite all the winners to the stage to accept the appreciation from DGT.
For all the winners, please, you may go to stage to receive the appreciations from the DGT. And we would like to invite Bapak Ahmad Dahlan that join us by Zoom because he's now in the UK. And we would like to invite the Honorable Assistant of Minister for Tax Compliance, Ministry of Finance of Republic of Indonesia, Bapak Yon Arsal, and also Director of Tax Disseminations, Services and Public Relations, Bapak Neil Maldrinur, to come to the stage to give appreciation plaques to all winners. So please, we invite all the winners, all the others for base papers, taxation call for paper, and also Bapak Yon, and also Bapak Neil Maldrin. to give the plaques of appreciations from DGT to all others that have been chosen as the winner of Taxation Call for Paper 2022. Again, please give a applause for all of us. We hope that for others from best papers or the winners of the taxation call for paper can give us spirits and inspirations. Congratulations for the second winner of the taxation call for paper. Bapak Ahmad Dahlan from UK, please you may shake your hands. Congratulations.
Congratulations, the second winner.
The second winner. Please, Bapak Yon and Bapak Neil, you may give virtually. Please, Bapak Ahmad Dahlan, you. Well, again, congratulations for all winners, Taxation Call for Paper 2022. Thank you for all winners.
And once again, congratulations to all the winners and all winners. And Bapak Yonarsai may have a seat. Bapak Nel Madino, please remain on the stage to give closing remark for all of us.
Cek. Thank you, Rima, Reza. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good afternoon, our respected speakers, moderators, ladies and gentlemen. Today, Wednesday, 7th of December 2022, the International Tax Conference has been held as an appreciation for the authors in the 2022 taxation call for papers. This event is addressed by the DGT to build a research environment as a part of the Tax Awareness Inclusion Program. We just heard the announcement of 4 winners. The selection and assessment have several measurable and accountable parameters. Based on the accumulated assessment of these various aspects, we have obtained the 4 best papers as follows. The 4th winner, a paper entitled Review of the Employee Performance Evaluation System at the Directorate General Taxes, its Effectiveness and Employee Satisfaction Level, authored by Anis Said Basalamah and Heru Widiatmanti. The 3rd winner, a paper entitled koreksi kebijakan harga transfer domestik, sebuah zero sum game penerimaan pajak nasional. Studi kasus KPP Pratama di wilayah DKI Jakarta, authored by Fajar Surya Putra and Yeni Farida. The second winner, a paper entitled Does Government Effectiveness Moderate the Relationship Between Regulatory Equality and Tax Complexity? A Tale of 100 Nations, authored by Muhammad Dahlan. And the first winner, a paper entitled Predicting Firms' Tax-Paying Behaviors Using Artificial Neural Networks, The Case of Indonesia, authored by Arifin Rosid. Please big applause for the 4 best. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I can say that the 4 best papers are papers that have characters very good, academically applicable, and include research of human resource and information technology. One of the discussions is about exploring tax potential by machine learning using the artificial neural networks, which needs to be considered as to how it is implemented. In addition, the research paper which is applicable is expected to be implemented in institution and disseminated to other employees. I hope that the research that has been conducted will not stop here, but can be continued so that we will be beneficial for DGT. Again, congratulations to the all winners. Thank you for the contribution of our participants who have submitted scientific papers to the taxation call for papers 2022. The 35 best papers will enter the publication process that's to be published in Scientext, an electronical accredited journal managed by the DGT. Ladies and gentlemen, we do hope that there will be no more researchers who write scientific papers on taxation. This is an effort to study tax policies and strategies and encourage the development of this country. Let's work together to build a dignified Indonesia. Together with strong taxes, we achieve a stronger and more sustainable world recovery. We look forward to your participation in the next taxation call for papers. Thank you very much. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you, Bapak Neil Maldrinur, for the closing remarks.
Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, now we are at the end of the event today. On behalf of the Directorate General of Taxes, we thank all participants and who attend this event today.
We do apologize if there are things that are less pleasing during the event. We hope that this event can bring a lot of benefits to all of us. See you on the next taxation cover paper and conference in 2024.
Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Pajak kuat, Indonesia maju.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's sing together with us.
Begitu banyak yang ada di benak-benak terkuat, ingin mengungkapkan dan mencurahkan berbagai rasa dan kesan tentang kehidupan. Oh, begitu syarat yang ada di benak menunggu tersirat. Ada segala cara dan berbagai jalan untuk mewujudkan hasrat di hati, hayalan ke dalam cipta dan seni. Mari berkarya dalam puisi dan lagu, musik dan tari. Layar perak, panggung gerak adalah tempat kita, insan dunia. Ekspresikan diri. Hey.
Begitu syarat hal yang mungkin dapat kita perbuat untuk berbagi rasa, berbagi suka dengan cara yang mulia. Wujudkan semua harapan ke dalam cipta dan seni.
Mari berkarya dalam puisi dan lagu, musik dan tari. Layar perak, panggung gerak adalah tempat kita, insan dunia. Ekspresikan diri.
Mari berkarya dalam puisi dan lagu, musik dan tari. Layar perak, panggung gerak adalah tempat kita, insan dunia. Ekspresikan diri. Berkarya dalam puisi dan lagu, musik dan tari. Layar perak, panggung gerak adalah tempat kita, insan dunia. Insan dunia. Ekspresikan diri.
Lagu apa dong?
Susah requestnya, terlalu jauh.
Jadilah kunjukkan bahagiamu, bahagiaku pasti berbagi. Kecuali dia akan jatuh hati kali ini. Hampir harus aku membuktikan padamu ada cinta yang nyata, setia dan setiap hari. Tak tega kau kan sendiri, meski seringkali kau malah asik sendiri. Karena kau lihat mereka dan malaikat tak bersayap, tak cemerlang, tak lupa. Namun kasih ini silakan kau adu. Malaikat juga tahu siapa yang jadi juaranya.
Hilang semalam baca impian,
tapi kesempatan
Sang Dewi.
Karena tak kau lihat, terkadang malaikat tak bersayap, tak cemerlang lalu bawa. Namun kasih ini silakan kau adu, malaikat juga tahu